Call this meeting of the Pearland Independent School District Board of Trustees to order on November 12th at 5:03 p.m. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Let the record show that trustees Carbone, Murphy, Decker, Gooden, Botkin, Floyd, and Decker are present.
That would be,
My
twice?
bad. Yeah, you're here twice, Rebecca. Did I say your name twice?
You did. Barry's here.
Oh, man. All right, let's try that again. Carbone, Murphy, Decker, Gooden, Botkin, Floyd, and Barry.
There
Is
you
that
go.
the perfect
That's
attendance?
good.
All right,
Perfect
fair
attendance.
enough. Okay. Sad, I
Getting
went
that
through
twice.
this. Okay, all right. All right, now, with the call to order out of the way and very poorly done by me, sorry about that, they will go into public comment. This is the portion of the board meeting where the board receives input from patrons. Each person who addresses the board will have 3 minutes to speak on his or her issue. In accordance with new state law, anyone who is here to speak on an agenda item does get to be heard prior to us considering the agenda item, and we have 8 people, and so that keeps us underneath, gives us 24 minutes, so we're underneath our time, so there's no need to talk about slowing or anyone not being able to speak. Okay, all right. First, we have, is this Travis Bolt? Sir.
Travis what?
Bolt. Did I get that correct, sir? Bolt. B-O-L-D-T. Travis Bolt.
Good evening, board, and thank y'all for having this meeting. My name's Travis Bolt. I am a father of a child growing up in this city, the husband of a public school teacher. I am also a candidate for state representative. I'm here in response to the Justice and Education Forum that was held last week, of which every member of this board was invited, and yet only Trustee Floyd and President Gooden were present. I can only speculate as to the priorities that were held by everyone else. However, if y'all had been in attendance, y'all would have seen passionate presentation by teachers, by parents, and by students expressing the experience of that white supremacy has caused to them in our school district. This is an ongoing concern that has not been left unaddressed by this board. There were many people who spoke on this issue. Everybody lamented that this should not be a political issue, of which I agree. President Gooden, you presented that your only reason for not passing a resolution and seconding a resolution condemning white supremacy was that you felt that it was a political standard which you felt was a drumbeat for the left to follow. However, the only way that a political discussion can be had is if there are 2 sides of an issue. So unless there is somebody here who is in favor of white supremacy, there are not 2 sides of this issue. So I would suggest that we remove politics from the issue, that we second a resolution to condemn white supremacy in our schools, and that it pass unanimously. If this were to occur, there would be no political consideration. However, I strongly doubt that that's what's going to happen tonight. Please do what is right and make sure that we are able to bring down white supremacy and provide it no safe haven in our community. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next, Liz Sitter.
Hi, I'm not as tall as he is. Hi, good evening. My name is Liz Sitta, and I'm the proud parent of 2 kids who are sitting here in the front row. Aiden Sitta, who attends Salvatora, and Olive Sitta, who attends C.J. Harris. So I'm extremely proud that they're being raised in this school district. I'm a proud Pearland ISD graduate, and I chose to raise my kids here. In addition, what I wanted to talk to you guys about too today is the wonderful partnerships that you have through communities and schools, and the development that I've seen with my son grow in those relationships. And so I want to commend you for being ahead of the game and really knowing, just as a mother of a child that's on the spectrum, that is a minority, just thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, next, Representative Ed Thompson. Good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members, Dr. Kelly. Thank y'all for allowing me to speak for a couple of minutes tonight. I wanted to take some time to kind of fill you in a little bit about what we're doing. We are actually attempting, and we're accomplishing it so far, but we're attempting to visit all 23 campuses here in Pearland ISD. I felt like it was very important after the last legislative session. We spent a tremendous amount of time during that session in regards to public education. Many of the bills that we discussed and passed, I felt like there were some more opportunities for us that we probably just couldn't quite get over that finish line prior to sine die. So I wanted to come back and actually make those visits to campuses, talk to the principals, talk to the counselors, visit with the teachers, visit with the children, visit with the kids in the school to hear what they had to say. And we've really had a great opportunity to see the, I always tell everybody, I say, if you've seen, I used to say, if you've seen one school district in Texas, you've seen one school district in Texas. Well, now I can say, if you've seen one campus, you've seen one campus, because they're all different. And it's truly amazing to me the work that's being done here in PISD, the students, the faculty, the administrators, the counselors. We've had a lot of really, really good discussions. I appreciate Kim Holcott working with us and scheduling these visits. We try not to take up too much of their time, but we want to hear from them. We really believe it's important to hear from those folks that are what we call boots on the ground. We get to hear from a lot of people when we're in Austin about that have special interest and have their agendas and have their perspective, but a lot of times most of the time the teachers and those folks don't have time to come to Austin to sit down and talk to us. So that's why we've taken on this opportunity to do this, and I just want you to know that I appreciate the opportunity to do it. It's an honor to represent Pearland ISD in the legislature, and I want to thank each and every one of you. I've had the opportunity to serve on this board, and it is one of those honors that I carry. It is one that I appreciate what you do. I know it's a difficult job, and thank you for it, for your service, and thank you for what you do. And may God continue to bless Pearland ISD. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Vidya, are you here? There you go. Good evening.
Good evening. I've spoke here a couple times before, but for all the new faces in the room, my name is Vidya. I am a junior right now at Dawson. I've gone to Pearland ISD schools since elementary school. I went to Massey. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone on this board for giving me the time to speak. I also wanted to address the Justice in Education Town Hall. In my opinion, justice is very interesting in that it's an ongoing fight. There really is no end to that. And I want to begin with starting a conversation. I think that, first of all, I'm very grateful that Trustee Floyd and Gooden showed up to that. But for everyone who didn't have the opportunity to make it there tonight, I wanted to bring that conversation back. I want to talk about the importance of starting a conversation in talking about justice, and especially with regards to diversity. I do not in any way believe that Pearland ISD is actively working against minority students. I am a minority student, and I have very much benefited from the hard work of this district. So I am in no position to say that, but I do believe that in talking about this as a community, not just with parents and people who have outside interests, but with students who experience the legislation that this board passes and discusses every day, I hope to have another opportunity for a town hall or a forum of discussion to really go over what we talked about in justice and education and make it specific to Pearland ISD. I hope that some more experiences from students and from teachers and substitutes who work in this district will be highlighted, just so we can talk about how we can work towards solving it. I'm really tired of just going back and forth and pointing fingers as to whose fault it is, because I don't think it's anyone's fault. I think that this is an opportunity for progress, and progress is the most important thing that we can do as people and as especially as constituents of this district and as students. I think that it's also my responsibility to make sure that this district is better for students after me, and I want to take that responsibility and call this board to action. I'm very impressed with the fact that we had attendance in that Justice for Education town hall, because I think that Pearland ISD is a leader in Brazoria County. If we do not change first, other districts will not change. And I believe that we are the ones who have that decision and have that power in showing what change looks like. So with that, I hope to move forward and I look towards progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fulis.
Hi, everybody. I'm speaking today because I think that when you do the job of a school board trustee, it's natural to get a little close to things. Some of you on the board pride yourselves on your financial expertise, some on your experience as educators, some on your understanding of student mental health issues and other types of expertise that you bring to the table. But the fact is that Dr. Kelly has staff with more expertise on school district financials than any of you will ever have. He has an army of educators working for him that he can tap for input at any time. He has experts on special education and mental health as well. He really doesn't need your expertise or your experience. He doesn't. And yet your input and your oversight are still critical. Why? Because you act as the voice of the community, here to represent the interests of Pearland's parents, taxpayers, and its students. Dr. Kelly is not an elected official, and so he cannot do that on his own. He needs you in that role so that he can do his job in a way that he knows is transparent and responsive to those he serves. That's a key difference between a public school district and charter schools. Charters are not answerable to a locally elected board, so the local community has no voice in how those schools are run. We don't want to give up that advantage. That's why when members of the community come to you with a request, the very first thought that every board member should have is, this is an opportunity. The authoritarian response is, how can I say no? The public servant's response is always, how can I say yes? If it's not too expensive, not harmful to others, not in violation of some law or rule, why not work with the community? And it's very important to remember that community doesn't just mean the people who voted for you. It means everyone that lives here. The NAACP came to you with an opportunity, a chance to show that you stood shoulder to shoulder with them on a completely nonpartisan moral issue. The board's refusal to consider it or even discuss it has been a shock to the public. Instead of making Dr. Kelly's job easier, you've now made it harder. There were no politics here. If there were, your political opponents would be happy that you decided to send such a negative public message, because it makes you more politically vulnerable. Do I look happy? I'm not. No one that I know is. So please think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Ms. Colleen, and if you wouldn't mind pronouncing your last name for me, please. Shokov. Thank you.
My name is Colleen Shulkoff, and I have been in education for 25 years. My children have and are attending Pearland ISD schools. They've had some amazing teachers and experiences in our schools. I began my teaching career in a school where 100% of the students were economically disadvantaged immigrants. It was the most rewarding experience of my public teaching life. I started my career in a loving environment where I felt appreciated, respected, encouraged, and heard. All of our students were held to the same high expectations, no matter their life circumstances. I gained so much confidence and knowledge from my time there. I have taught full-time in Pearland ISD for 3 years. It was the most toxic environment I have ever experienced. I heard teachers speak of students using racial slurs, expectations were not as high for certain groups of students, and the negative atmosphere that permeated throughout our school created an environment where the staff did not feel safe or trusted. We were constantly told that if we were unhappy, too bad, we could be easily replaced. When a colleague felt comfortable telling me, because I am white, that an African American student we both taught was a hood rat, I immediately reported the teacher. I was told that he had taught at my school for a long time, the students liked him, and we should just let this go. I discovered that this district favors nepotism, old ideas, and anything that keeps Pearland in the past. Subtle forms of retribution are doled out to teachers that make too much noise about anything. So we keep quiet and remain miserable. The only and most important thing we heard every single day was that all of our students needed to pass the STAR. The stress of teaching in such a negative environment took its toll on my health, so I took them up on their offer to easily replace me. In addition, it is imperative that we make changes to include our LGBTQ+ population in a respectful way. Each time I've asked for my child to have their chosen name printed on their student ID, I've been told no because of safety reasons. If you really cared about the mental health and safety of my student, then you would honor who they are. Refusing to do so has nothing to do with safety and everything to do with personal biases against my child and others like them. Statistics have proven that not calling a transgender child by their preferred name increases their risk of suicide. An easy, inexpensive fix in the Skyward system that would allow parents to list their child's preferred name and pronouns could protect hundreds of youth in this district. Adopting a district-wide zero-tolerance policy against white supremacy, hate crimes, and discrimination against LGBTQ+ students is the very least we can do to honor and protect all of our students in the district.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ellison Sholkoff. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Ellison Sholkoff. I am a freshman at Dawson High School. I started to question my gender around 7th grade. Everyone's bodies were changing, so I was told that it was normal and that everyone felt this way. But when my questions turned to a new, burning hatred of my body and everything girl, I found myself clinging to the ever-present question of why did God do this to me? I don't quite know how to explain the feeling, but it's like waking up in a body that isn't yours, or rather, that you don't want. The constant discomfort and unease keeps me on high alert all the time. Body dysphoria is a constant uphill battle. I can say with confidence that my district has not provided me with adequate support. I often hear about my trans friends in Austin, whose public schools celebrate Pride Week with rainbow bracelets and guest speakers. I have friends in other states who use their schools' gender-neutral bathrooms. I'm constantly made to feel like these things are a luxury, completely out of my reach. Like these are rarities that should not represent the status quo. But the older I get, I can't help but noticing the increase in what feels like basic inclusion. I want Pearland ISD to notice me, to see my struggle, and to take a stand. I want my name included in Skyward, my real name. I want an ID that reflects who I am, and I want my real name written on my coffee cup every morning. I am not asking for much, which is why this shouldn't be difficult. As I grow older, I've begun to better understand why God did this to me. Because if it wasn't for me, there would be no one to stand up for my trans sister with a love of photography, and my brother and his art, and my gender nonconforming sibling who can play the ukulele better than anyone I know. These beautiful people deserve a chance to be themselves, and frankly, I believe I do too.
Thank you very much. Okay, Shanidria Wagner.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shanidria Wagner. I'm a proud Pearland parent. I have 2 children in the district. I'm also a partner. Our tutoring business, Spanish, etc., Pearland loves to partner with the district. Kim Hawkett reaches out when needed. And I'm also an educational consultant with 20 years of experience training teachers on a national level. I've trained in anywhere from Compton to Chicago to the suburbs of Seattle, Washington, New York, Florida, by the border, you name it, I've been there. I've seen all kinds of schools, and I'm proud to say that at the end of the day, when I leave the schools that I currently do work with to make sure they get off the list for low performance, that I come home to a home where my baby boy, who's 9 years old, sits and teaches me the strategies he's learned. He's in very good hands from an instructional standpoint. As a parent who was once bullied, I want to say kudos to you, Mrs. Carbone, because of the efforts the district has made to secure counselors who actually work with the children's mental health. The main complaint at all campuses I go to is that counselors have no time to really do their jobs, which is to work with the children. That doesn't happen in Pearland ISD. So I came tonight to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I've worked with Dr. Kelly before on a cultural committee that Mayor Reed started. I want to say my heart goes out to you. It has been going out to you, and I'm tired of being silent about it. Here's my issue. The town hall meeting the other night, I didn't go for a number of reasons, but when I did watch it, I was expecting to see this long line of parents with all these different racial stories about different things that had happened throughout the district. I was poised to support them. I heard none of that. What I heard was a recycled argument that many parents, many black parents, are tired of hearing. We're tired of hearing it because we know the district isn't perfect, and we read his blogs. We know he doesn't like testing. I know, we know Dr. Kelly's stance on things. We don't rely on what hearsay to form our opinions. But I saw recycled stories, and I saw pretty much a whining session and an attack on Mr. Gooden about this resolution. I once supported the resolution. I don't anymore because I found out some things I didn't like. But I think our district, all districts need to deal with culture, not from an ethnic standpoint, I mean that too, but the culture in which we all treat each other with kindness, no matter if you're black, white. I don't hear many cries for the plight of white individuals because they get talked to crazily too. They get talked badly from black people who feel they're superior. And most recently, we had a former school board candidate call your husband a white supremacist, and she has yet to justify that. She has yet to tell me why she did it. So yes, we all have pain, we all have issues, and if we're gonna really get any progress in this district, the way people say we should, we've got to care about everybody's feelings. So we're tired of the nonsense. Yes, I'm tired of it, and thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Gooden,
Yes,
I'd like
sir.
to bring up the resolution that was just mentioned by Ms. Wagner for consideration at next month's meeting.
All right, was that yours or the NAACP? Or does it matter?
That's the NAACP resolution that was
NAACP,
brought up.
Okay. Okay, is there a second to bring up the NAACP resolution for next week's meeting?
Next month.
Excuse me, next month's meeting. All right. At the great risk of having everything I say twisted, let me preface this by saying that we as a board and a community must not fall into the dysfunction that can actually begin to damage a school district, right? We're disagreeing on something. We're not disagreeing on content. We're disagreeing on methodology. And I don't think that this board is ignoring these issues. I think the board is taking action towards these issues. And we have something on the agenda this evening from the Culturally Responsive Committee that I think is going to get us down the road on addressing these issues. I did say at the Justice and Town Hall that I did see a political slant to the original resolution, and I think that the second resolution from the NAACP got caught up in the same thing. But I'm 100% certain that no one here supports white supremacy. And just to give you an example of how this is all going off the rails, I heard from a reporter today from the Houston Press, and she asked me if I was backing away from the resolution because of a conservative backlash. And I just think it's ridiculous that this has reached this pitch. This board needs to be focused on its business. This board needs to be working with community organizations And I, for one, look forward to continuing to do that. I don't think, Michael, that the proper response to you is silence, and that's why I stepped out to say what I'm saying, and I hope that you take it from where it's coming from. It's coming from the heart. But I think that if we're going to get through this, then the board, the community, we're all going to have to start communicating with each other in honesty and in truth, and with the best interest of our kids in mind. With that said, I will move on. That ends the public comment section. With public comment done, the Board of Trustees of the Pearland Independent School District will now convene in a closed meeting to discuss the following items posted on our agenda this evening as allowed by Title V, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, and/or the Education Code. The superintendent will present for the board's consideration or discussion of the following matters: Sections 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 082. No voting will take place in closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussions in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open meeting. It is now 5:29 p.m., and the board will stand adjourned. The board will reconvene in open session at 6:23 p.m. No action was taken on anything discussed in closed session. Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move we accept and approve the superintendent's recommendation for employment of personnel as presented.
Second.
Motion Decker, second Floyd. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0 with Trustee Bakken temporarily out of the meeting. We will go from there to opening comments by Trustee Murphy.
The flag, or
What's up to you, sir?
okay? I guess we'll do comments first, and then if we can put the allegiance up, then we'll go. Gosh, a lot of people here tonight. I just want to say quickly, I'd like to thank all the teachers and staff, and especially we got 3 high school principals standing behind me, and one which oversees my student. But I don't think we give enough credit and enough love to what our teachers do on a day-to-day basis. When I signed up to do this several years ago, I ran a campaign on retaining and hiring the best teachers that we have in the district, and I really just personally, and I'm sure this board as well, want to thank the teachers and the rest of the staff within our district for everything that they do, because they do a tough job from 6 o'clock in the morning to probably 9 o'clock at night. So first of all, just want to recognize all of our teachers and our administration staff for everything that they do. Thank you guys so much. And I would like to take a moment, if we have any veterans that are here with us today, I'd like you to please stand so we could recognize our veterans. Although Veterans Day was yesterday, we obviously thank you for all that you do. All right, now if the rest of you will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas flag. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, be seated.
Thank you, sir. Does that complete your comments? All right, well, we will go directly into board recognition.
Good evening. Pearland ISD is home to some of the most talented students and staff in the state of Texas, and now comes the time that we like to recognize them for their achievements. Parents, feel free to come up at any time to take photos. First, we'd like to honor Dawson High School, their athletic trainers, for being selected recently by the National Athletic Trainers Association as a Safe Sports School First Team. The award champions safety and recognizes secondary schools that have met the recommended standards to improve safety in sports, and reinforces the importance of providing the best level of care, injury protection, and treatment of student athletes. Here representing Dawson High School this evening are the head trainer, Chris Shattuck, and associate athletic trainer, Christine DeCote. Y'all ready? Next, we're so proud to honor some students from some top bands, Barry Miller Junior High and Pearland Junior High West, who recently finished 4th and 11th, respectively, in the Texas Music Educator Association State Honor Band Competition. Barry Miller Junior High and Pearland Junior High West were among the top 16 bands from across the state to compete for this honor. Here to introduce their students are band directors from Barry Miller, Christopher Bennett, Heather Massey, and Blank Lean.
Okay, Aditya Bhagat. Charlie Hackworth. Han Tao Jin. Yannick Liebschner. Kenny Pham. Kristen Platt. Aiden Sherrill. Joshua Smith. Garrett Taylor, and Layla Wagner.
And parents, all the photos that our photographer up here are taking, you can get those off of our Flickr page. We'll post the link on Facebook tomorrow or the next day. So if she's got one of your kids that's going across, we'll make sure that you guys can get that and download it. Next, to introduce students from Pearland Junior High West, our band directors Meredith Bishop, Jessica Steiner, and Curtis Amory.
Samuel Brady. Jesslyn Chen. Jason Dawson. Andrew Guan. Becky Gunlock. Thomas Moore. Michael Pear. Isabella Ritchie. Anusha Sin. Matthew Steinbaker. Evan Stringfellow. Andrew Swafford. Benjamin Walsworth Perkis. And Alexander Wright. And Principal Dana Miles.
Next, we're honored to recognize some high school students who stand out in the National Scholarship and Recognition Programs. Thanks to high PSAT scores, these students may qualify for scholarships and have their names and academic information sent to U.S. colleges and universities. First, we'll recognize students who've been named as the National Hispanic Recognition Scholars. These students must be at least 1/4 Hispanic or Latino, have achieved at least a minimum PSAT score for their region, and the students with a grade point average of 3.5 or higher are designated as scholars. Only 7,000 students nationwide received this recognition this year. From Dawson High School, Liliana Hildebrand. And from Turner College and Career High School, Garel Castellan. Next, we'd like to honor students who met the highest standards on advanced placement exams. This year, 641 of our students achieved scholar status, an increase over last year. Our first students received recognition as AP Scholars with Distinction. These students earned an average score of 3.5 on all AP exams and scores of 3 or higher on 5 or more exams. From Dawson High School, Joshua Asef. Christina Bell. Josh Bouillon. This next student, it also earned National Merit Commended recognition, Jabari Bowen. Ethan Chen. This next student, besides being an AP Scholar, is also a National Merit Commended and National Hispanic Recognition Scholar, Alberto Fernandez. David George. Jose Gutierrez. Samuel Harrigan. Patrick Harris. Julie Henry. Riel Izales. Nathan Jacob. Nathan Lamont. Sumi? Sumi Nan. Sorry, Sumi. Ethan Martin. Madeline Mellon. Kyle Nguyen. Logan Nguyen. All right, Manish, here we go. Manish Parmesh Warren. Emily Prince. Anika Sansgiri. Anna Schneider. Benjamin Toads. And then also an AP Scholar and a National Hispanic Recognition Scholar, Michael Zamora. From Pearland High School, AP Scholar and a National Merit Commended, Lauren Adams. Ariana Chan. Also an AP Scholar and National Merit Commended, Annette Murray. Isabel Phoenix. Nicholas Scruggs. Also earning National Merit Commended, Lucas Snyder. AP Scholar and National Hispanic Recognition Scholar, Leah Shea Torres. And now, National AP Scholar Awards. Less than 1% of AP exam takers worldwide earn this award. These students achieved an average score of 4 or higher on all exams and scores of 4 or higher on 8 or more AP exams. From Dawson High School, Erica Anton, who's also National Merit Commended. Charlotte Harrington. A National AP Scholar and National Merit Commended, Arav Kumar. Kathy Ling. National AP Scholar, National Hispanic Recognition Scholar, and National Merit Commended, Colby Medina. Adita Namjashi. Shareya Sakar, also National Merit Commended. Jessica Williams. Andrew Yang. And from Pearland High School, Caleb Kimball. It's a big donation. You're one. We have one more thing. Finally, we'd like to recognize an organization that is a big supporter of RISE mentoring in our district. During the months of July and August, South Fork Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram held a campaign that generated a total of over $14,000 coming from sales as well as employees and customer donations to support Pearland ISD's mentoring efforts. In addition to monetary support, the owner, Chris Godwin, gives his time as a RISE mentor and also allows his employees to mentor on the clock. We are extremely grateful for Mr. Godwin's and South Fork's support of RISE mentoring. Please come forward. And accepting is Mandy Benedicts, our mentoring coordinator. There you go. Thank you so much. This concludes our recognition this evening. Thank you and congratulations to everyone.
Okay, board, we're going to get started again in 5 minutes, 6:45.
Y'all don't have to leave. Y'all can stick around if you want. We've got some exciting stuff coming up.
As I've noted to a couple of board members, we're going to take a few items out of order. And let's go ahead and jump back in, actually, as the agenda is printed, and go to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is presented with items A1 through 7. Are there any items that a board member would like to pull for discussion?
Yes, sir. I'd like to pull item 1, please.
Item 1. Are there any others? Is there a motion for the consent agenda to be approved, items 2 through 7?
So moved.
Motion Floyd. Is there a second?
Second.
Second Murphy. Any further discussion? All in favor? Let's vote. Motion carries 7-0. All right, item 1. Mrs. Carbone?
I'd like to take a minute to talk specifically about the town hall meeting that we had, I guess 2 weeks ago now, out at Dawson High School, and we covered the topics of vaping, safety, security, mental health, and then reunification plans. And I see several familiar faces in the room tonight. The high school principals discussed a lot of the issues that they are implementing at their schools regarding vaping. And so I just really appreciate the efforts that you guys are doing, the creativity that you're bringing to the table to let your kids and your students know, and kind of giving it to them and letting them make it their own about how they're reaching out to their peers. We had representation from Memorial Hermann with Dr. Gupta talking about the effects of vaping on lungs and the many deaths. He's seen near-death cases just in the last few weeks, which was amazing, giving the statistics about it. And Chinda Moore and the data that she brought to the table and all of the things that she covered. Don Tillis covering the facilities piece, and Larry Berger and his tenacity coming to the table with the reunification plan. I just can't say thank you enough for you guys taking out your time, especially with the long days that you have, for the efforts that you made to reach out to the community. So thank you. I do have one question though, Dr. Kelly. When we talk about the upcoming town halls, can we ensure in the future that we get those out on Skyward in addition to the social media piece? Okay.
Talk about that. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. And then can we also make sure that those are either audio or video recorded?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So that brings my comments to a close unless anybody else has something they want to add.
I'm going to talk. So this is the second one, correct?
Yes.
And the first one was when?
Fall.
Can I
last
remember?
fall.
It was in the
Spring.
spring. That's
It
what
was-
I thought. Spring,
The
correct?
first one.
Okay.
Okay.
And we have
Yeah.
another
Ed
one
Turner.
in April.
And that they're open up to all the public, right, to come speak about any particular topic or ask any question, correct?
Right.
Well, we generally, like with this issue, we had a list of presentation topics that we covered, and then anybody could ask comments at the end. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All right, is there a motion to approve item 1 from the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve item 1 from the consent agenda.
All right,
Second.
motion Carbone, second Decker. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Okay, now to the items that we're going to take a little bit out of order. We're going to jump down to item 6 from the regular agenda, recommendations regarding the naming of facilities within Pearland ISD and possible action on these recommendations. And we have a presentation from Pearland High School Principal John Palumbo.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. Let's see if I can. All right, so it was a fun committee. Looking at all the aspects and things and the impact of naming and what that has on campuses and parameters and things of that nature. And so we held 2 meetings with regards to that. So our first meeting was basically more like exploration, kind of getting a pulse on where we were living, had some questions to ask ourselves, and so we went through those, and I'll get into those in just a couple minutes. And then the second meeting was after basically we had some homework. Our homework was to kind of go talk to public, constituents, staff members, things of that nature to kind of get a pulse on where people's feelings may be with regards to naming, what the process should be like, where do we name, what facilities do we name, things of that nature with regards to that. So it started out with a directive from you all, Board of Trustees, in looking at naming district facilities. And so we took that initiative and went after that and tried to set some parameters and give you at least some guidance as a board of what information we gathered from public community and staff in our district. The first meeting, our big exploration was just several questions. One was, should we reconsider naming South, East, and West, the junior highs? Should certain areas and buildings be named, like auditoriums, lecture halls, rooms, libraries, things of that nature? We also talked about naming the wings of Pearland High School, or some people call it the North Campus, South Campus, original PHS campus, or Searcy campus, looking at that. Also thoughts on renaming the football stadium. And then also specifically there was some discussion about Cheryl Searcy and Mr. Preston Bullard with regards to where and how should we recognize them moving forward. So in our first meeting, we reviewed current PISD facility names. We had a group exercise where we basically looked at those 5 questions and sat down as groups and kind of came up with what was our driving force. We had a large group discussion. It was interesting because our first round of meetings, lots of feeling of yes, opening up the renaming of junior highs. Certain areas of buildings we were pretty much in consensus with regards to public areas were areas that we were looking at, not like hallways, rooms, things of that nature, but where public gatherings would take place, auditoriums, football fields, baseball fields, softball fields, things of that nature. And then also with regards to the Searcy and Preston Bullard overview, and then we got the homework to go out and talk to our constituents about those things. In the second meeting, and I'll back up a little bit, on the first meeting, you know, Principal Pearland High School, there's been a lot of disjointment with regards to Searcy campus, PHS campus, things of that nature with regards to that. And when we initially started that conversation, talking to my staff in particular, a lot of my staff had started out with the feeling of, you know, we're really wanting to become one. That's one of the big things that the Bond Project was doing, was bringing our campuses together and not having two separate sides and things of that nature. But after doing the homework and talking to more staff members and continuing to have that conversation, one of the things that came out of it was there's nothing wrong with having Preston Bullard's name on our building, on the south side of the building. We felt like it's the right way to honor him, number one. Number two, it puts us in a position where, for our directionally challenged staff, they're a lot easier to find the name and associating that with the sides of the building. And we like the honor, too, of Miss Cheryl Searcy as well. That was one of the things that came out of discussions that I had with my staff. We didn't want to lose that name because part of the committee was talking about taking both names and moving them to a junior high as possibly that. So that's one of the things that came out. We also had principal commentary from the junior high principals, and I'll touch on that in just a little bit. And we also had some live polling with regards to that. Through the questions, I'll talk a little bit through what the kind of consensus was in the meeting. With regards to renaming junior highs, generally we were neutral or no support for it. You know, they're kind of ingrained in our community with the names that they have. Also, there were some concerns about, we've spent bond dollars on graphics, things of that nature, on entrances and things like that. Also, to the impact of cost. There's a lot of things with regards to just murals on the wall, basketball courts, gymnasiums, rechanging that, uniforms. There's a lot with that. We supported revisiting in the future and looking at that if that's what the board looks at. One of the other things that I talked about specifically as a principal, I think it's important that if we go that route as a district, we need to seriously consider the possible cultural impact that would happen on that campus, and making sure we do something to help the staff rebrand, because that's a huge shift. You know, just speaking as Pearland High School principal, you know, we've got pride, honor, success. We tie that to our school name, and pretty much every school has something like that. And so if you do change a name, there needs to be some consideration with regards to that rebranding and helping us staff make that movement. And the second thing is should we rename areas of the buildings? Again, it was pretty consistent with regards to, and the consensus was just major areas, you know, just auditoriums, gymnasiums, things of that nature. Not really libraries, hallways, things of that nature was kind of our driving force behind it. There should be more education for students about the namesake on the campus sites. That was one of the discussions we had, was we don't feel like our kids, and even sometimes our community, may not truly know why is Sam Jamison named Sam Jamison, you know, and looking at those schools, and how can we do a better job as a school district and schools to educate our kids on that. One of the things that came out of this was the idea of a Hall of Honor. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's something that we talked about with regards to something to possibly pursue moving forward to honor people, not only people that pass away, but also living people. We've got a lot of great people. We've got over 80 years of history in our district, and there's been great members of our community that have graduated from our schools and are making a great impact in our communities or in the world, and to be able to recognize and honor those people. And so that's one of the things that we talked about. And possibly being managed through the Education Foundation was one of the things that came through that. This is just a sample of some of the Hall of Honors that are out there. The one I'm most familiar with is Deer Parks. I've seen theirs up close and personal. It's really done well. And so these are just some options that we thought about. One of the places that we talked about possibly housing that, if that's even a question you have, as we even talked about just right out here, right outside the boardroom. It's a natural place for what all the traffic that we have, for all the board recognitions and things of that nature, that people get to see the recognition of people that have contributed to not only our campuses and schools, but also our community. So naming the wings, like I said, we probably had a 180-degree turn from that, from the first meeting to the second meeting with regards to that. And we have a large support of naming the wings, or what we call buildings. And just some things that we threw out was probably naming it building, you know, Cheryl Searcy Building, Preston Bullard Building was our recommendation. But there was a strong support, again, to keep Cheryl Searcy's name on the North Campus. And that's just because it's what it's always been. And a lot of our staff members were like, we don't want to lose that, because that is part of our history with regards to that. There was no support for renaming Pearland High School.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'd heard that a couple times out in the community, but I don't think that was the conversation we were trying to have. But I'm glad that was cleared up.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it is that there's just so much history. I mean, it's 80 years, and that was one of the things that we talked about, and just thought it was just a bad idea, honestly.
Good. So now we know that. Good. Let's just be. Yeah.
There was no support for that. I'll say that.
I'm sorry. What was the original?
Well, one of the things that we looked at in the committee was we looked at all schools and buildings that had no name after somebody. And Pearland High School is actually one. So you got Pearland High School, Junior High East, West, South. And so that's kind of where we started. We started at ground zero. What buildings are actually out there? I think one was a transportation, one maybe a maintenance building. I think those were the 6, if I remember correctly. And that's kind of where that started. But Pearland High School was quickly shut down in the committee. So
I don't understand that. You have a north and a south, a Searcy, and I guess where's this south building located then?
Well, the south building is the original Pearland High School building. So we try to
Center.
Yeah. 9th grade center is north.
Cheryl C.
Original
Searcy
PHS
9th grade
building
center,
is south.
And which one's south?
The original PHS.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the names that we're really looking at, Cheryl Searcy and Preston Bullard, large support to rename the buildings after both. Support of relocating the Cheryl Searcy name. One of the things that we talked about was making it a little bit more prominent on 35, because it's kind of tucked away, and also too, it's over an entrance. And we've had some community members that they just see a sign and they think it's an entrance, and so they go there. So we talked about it possibly just moving it a little bit further north, where it's a little bit more prominent on 35, still facing 35, but just to kind of relocate it a little bit with regards to that. So that's something that we discussed there. And then, like I said, renaming the south building Preston Bullard, and keeping Pearland High School as the front of the building, and leaving that there. One of the other things that was interesting that ended up coming up in the discussion, because we started talking about the football stadium, there was a very vocal concern about whether we like it or not. People still refer to the stadium as the Rig, right? And so how can we make it more neutral so that both campuses feel like they have some ownership in the stadium? And so I think it was renamed 5-7 years ago, was Pearland Stadium. We'd like to see Pearland Independent School District or Pearland ISD Stadium. The other idea that we had coming out of it too is while we're actually doing a facelift on the Rig, is possibly doing some kind of LED board up on the top, and then each school can customize. You know, when Pearland High School is there, we can put up the Rig. I've heard that Dawson refers to it as the Nest. They can put up the Nest up there as well, if that's what they want, if that's what they would like. Also, too, we think there's some benefits as well when we rent the facility out as well. You can advertise like the 4th of July event and things of that nature that we've hosted in the past. That there's some other residual benefits that we would have to some kind of signage like that. And so that's one of the things that we discussed and came out of that discussion. And so this is kind of the, I guess, renderings of what we had discussed, where you could flip it. One says the Rig, one says the Nest. and I'm assuming that we'll be able to put up some graphics and things of that nature with regards to that, and also gives us the flexibility to customize for any events. So I'm going to read from my screen because this is pretty small, but this basically goes down the questions that we pretty much discussed and gives you an idea of what the results were. Should we reconsider naming facilities after people not deceased? It was a pretty resounding no. We felt like if we're going to name facilities and buildings, that's a pretty high honor for a person, and that's where we discussed that, but we also ended up coming into and discussing the Hall of Honor as well, because we also wanted a way to honor living people that were making an impact in our community. If not deceased, they asked what should be the minimum age. We were pretty neutral, you know, because I think if you make an impact, there were some ages listed there, 60, 65, and 70, but we didn't really feel like the age made a difference with regards to that. If you make an impact in our district, we definitely want to honor you. If deceased, should there be a waiting period? There was yes of 2 years, but in that discussion, we discussed maybe not, we don't have to wait 2 years. You know, if we wanted to do a little bit shorter, that's something that we would be open to. But some waiting period was one of the recommendations through that committee. Should the board consider the Hall of Honor? We said yes to living and deceased. If so, who managed it? One of the suggestions was Pearland Education Foundation, and they talked about trying to create an alumni subcommittee out of that to kind of run that piece. Should areas of the school be available for naming? Again, we talked about only large areas, large public areas, and then naming the school wings, not naming the junior highs. We were a little mixed there. It was fairly strong in no, but there was still some mixture of, if we named it after somebody to honor somebody, we'd be okay with it, but wanted y'all to consider the factors. Renaming the stadium, we said no, just making sure that it was clarified as Pearland Independent School District Stadium. And then there was a very strong belief that we would need to rename the South Building at PHS after Mr. Preston Bullard. And then how should Cheryl Searcy be recognized? And we wanted to keep her name on that. So that's just kind of the results of the polling that we did during that meeting. This was just some feedback and things, words and things of that nature that we took from the process as a committee, and kind of gives you an idea of, it was a really good process. It was a really good, thorough process where a lot of good discussion happened with that. In summary, so basically, in general, no support to rename junior highs. Strongly consider Hall of Honor. That's something that we think is something that we may want to consider as a school district. If we're going to name large public areas, make sure it's a public area that people are going to and not parceling off campuses too much. Slightly moving the Cheryl Searcy name, naming the South Campus at Pearland High School after Mr. Preston Bullard, and then clarify the name on the stadium, and then consider introducing some kind of customizable option for the stadium. Were our recommendations. Any questions?
I had a question. So I think I speak for myself only 110% in favor of adding Preston's, Mr. Bullard's name onto the south side of the campus. Did the committee have a recommendation of where specifically the name? So
yes.
If
Where the old Pearland High School name used to be on the round.
Okay.
Was where we were talking about. That's probably the most prominent from the road. If you try to put it up on the new metal paneling, it's not going to really show, so it's probably got to be on some type of red brick. And we also didn't want it to be too close to an entrance to give public the wrong idea that, hey, you entered a school here. We still want to have the main entrance so if they come and visit. So on the round of the south building is where we recommend it.
And that used to be your main entrance?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll go get a couple comments and things. So, first of all, thanks for being involved and kind of leading this thing. But so I would have never, graduating from Pearland, imagined that you'd have a Searcy side and a South side. But having a kid there now, and you ask your kid, where am I dropping you, or where am I picking you up? And yeah, no, as big as it is, it's believable to understand that you have a Searcy side and a Preston side, or a north and a south side of that campus now that it's so big, and all the buildings in the back and things that we've added on. So I can certainly see that. I would have never thought the LED part of the stadium, which is an innovative idea of how you could change that name. And I do understand that Dawson does call it the Nest and through their football program and things like that. My question is, and this may not be for you to answer, but maybe with facilities, when we rent that place, or if we have let's say a non-Pearland or Dawson game, let's say it's Dickinson and North Shore, and they come play here, how do they look at that? Do they say it's at, in like A-Leaf or somewhere else where it's one big stadium, they have one name? So when people come to play here, like a playoff, or they rent our facility, do they say I'm playing at the Rig, or do they say I'm playing at Pearland Stadium?
I would venture to say that the vast majority of people refer to it as the Rig, and that's just because it's been ingrained for years.
Right.
Now I think that over time, I think that would change with that option, and so I think that's just one of those things that it's what people grew up with, and it's kind of one of those things that's like I saw the other day, somebody in an article, somebody referred to it as the Rig, even though that's not the name of it. And so that may always happen for a while, but I think eventually it would change if we were able to flip an LED or something along those lines.
Yeah, I guess that would kind of be I like the idea of an LED because you can change it, but then the question becomes, if you do rent it out for a 4th of July or something, then how do they advertise it, right? And,
I think the idea
but it's just a thought.
they would call it the Pearland ISD Stadium and kind of have that on the brick somewhere under that LED welcome to Pearland, or Pearland ISD Stadium, and then have the Rig up on the thing. I think
'Cause the name of the building right now is
Pearland Stadium.
Pearland Stadium.
It's Pearland Stadium.
Yeah.
And when you look it up, when other districts look it up, it's Pearland District Stadium, actually.
Okay.
It's what it's called.
So it's already called Pearland District Stadium.
It's called Pearland District Stadium.
Physical name on there is Pearland Stadium.
That's on the scoreboard.
And the
It says
committee
Pearland
thought
Stadium.
that Pearland Stadium was still too closely associated with PHS?
Yes.
Okay.
What's in the parking lot?
I wasn't ever offended by that.
Yeah, we had several committee members that were from the Dawson zone, and they expressed that pretty strongly, that they still feel that there's not a neutral naming of it, and then that's where it kind of evolved into the LED and looking at something like that as being a possible option to let us customize. We can have fun with it, each school, and then when we have rivalry week, we can put them both up and have fun, or we'll flip
Just the
who
home
gets
team.
on there. We can put them both up there. We all live here
It's only
together.
fair, it's one home team.
Okay, I don't want to rush the discussion if anybody has any other comments, but
Say again?
I don't want to rush the discussion if anybody has any other comments, but I would ask one thing. What was the actual suggestion of the name to go up there? Was it Preston Bullard Academic Building?
Well, what we looked at was trying to do something that wasn't overly complicated, not too wordy. That's kind of that's part of what Cheryl Searcy, I think it says Cheryl Searcy Campus at PHS. We felt like that was just too much, and trying to really, because it is the building, even though it's all connected now, that was the original building on that side, and so we landed on building. We didn't think wing was the right wording or honoring enough of those people. And so we landed on the word building. That may not be the perfect word. That's just kind of where the committee landed with it. We wanted to try to keep it simple, but also, honor them in the right way as well.
So you're going to have a Cheryl Searcy campus and a Preston Bullard
Well, we
building?
would share a Cheryl Searcy building,
Where it is now.
And
Preston
building.
Bullard building.
Okay.
Preston Bullard Building. And then, if I may ask, Mr. Richter, you're sitting next to Mr. Bullard, Brian, right? Right. So I'll just ask you, if what was, because I can't remember, what was the initial request for the name on the building, or are you satisfied with what you're hearing here?
Would you come to the mic?
Yeah, if you don't mind coming to the mic, I appreciate it. Sorry, I tricked you into that. Yeah. So.
Nothing like being put on the spot, right?
Yeah.
Well, we just need to discuss it a little bit further with the family. My Julie I was Preston's daughter. He did have a first name. So his name is actually Garland Preston Bullard. So but he always went by Preston. So we need to figure out if the rest of the family wants to name it with a G in front of it, whatever we name it, since that was his real name, G. Preston Bullard. But I'm not sure. They may just say just drop it and leave it Preston. Preston Bullard Building I don't have a problem with that at all. That's fine with me. You know,
Yeah, and the original request or idea was something to do with the high school campus because that was kind of his biggest accomplishment was getting that campus built. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, anything is a tremendous honor, and whatever is decided is wonderful. But yeah, I think the South Campus is. I think Mom's really. That's the one that she's in. Really likes, and think that's the best thing to associate him with moving forward. So.
Okay, thank you very much. So, like I said, I wasn't trying to rush the discussion, but I mean that is the recommendation. And is there anything further?
I just have one quick question. The cost associated with it, I don't think it'll be astronomical by any means, but does that come from campus funds or from bond funds, or how is that?
We really haven't discussed it, but there is no reason why it couldn't come from bond funds if we so choose.
And we have some left.
We're in good shape.
The same can be said if we went for an LED.
Yes, yes, sir.
So, well, first I want to say thank you to the committee for all spending the time that y'all did discussing this. I was one of the ones that kind of pushed for the renaming, looking at an old policy that we hadn't looked at in a long time, and I'm very pleased with what has come out, because in education business, a lot of times, and I've been in it for 16 years, and well, 7, so I'm going to 6 in this board, so we get complacent and we don't look at old policies, and so it's refreshing to see that innovation has come out of this, and thank you to the Bullard family for pushing us in the direction to because it really came out because of you guys. This committee came out, and I want to commend y'all for that. And so, that being said, you know, I like the idea of the LED in the Pearland ISD Stadium. I do like the Bullard building, because that's where probably what's going to end up being. I'm being straightforward as a former teacher there. It's going to be the Cersei, and it's going to be go to the Cersei, go to the Bullard. You know, it's the way it is, the way kids talk. Absolutely 100% love the Hall of Honor. That's another innovative thing that came out of this. I think that feeds my wanting to, you know, honor people that are living. There's so many people who have contributed to our district that deserve. And I could just rattle off 3 or 4 off my head right now, but I think that's huge. The one question I did have was on other campuses besides high school campuses. Did y'all talk? I know you talked about like gymnasiums and stuff, but did you talk about like at an elementary? Would it be the like I know everybody's gonna have a gymnasium, but I think right or cafetorium or whatever they call them. Did you talk about elementary schools at all, or?
We didn't, honestly. I think because the focus was where was the names going to end up, you know, and just kind of holistically looking at it. So we didn't actually touch elementaries.
Yeah, and I think that's for us to, as a board, to decide how we want to, you know, we want to make our naming policy read, right? So, and if we don't want to do cafeterias.
Well, but I would argue that in elementaries, your public gathering space is typically your cafeteria, because of the cafetorium, right? And so we think that would be I would say that, speaking on behalf of the committee, we would say that that's a natural place. We just wanted the parameter of it's a public venue, you know, where community is going to come to, and that's where we're, you know, people are going to see the honor of it versus, you know, I can do a lecture hall and stuff like that. That's not really. You know, because getting something named after you is a huge honor, and I think that's where we wanted to keep it as it's something substantial when you get a name on it.
Sure, Mr. President, quick question: did we actually adopt the new policy, or were we waiting on them, and then we were going to adopt a new naming policy or what did we, I cannot remember.
We
2 board
adopted
meetings
the
ago.
policy.
What's that?
We adopted the policy
Okay.
that would
To
allow us
fragment?
to fragment.
Okay.
Yes.
But there was no specifics of what.
No, there was not.
Okay.
No, that was not. That was what we were waiting on guidance from.
Okay,
Future boards.
thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President, go ahead. Sorry, Lance.
What's that?
No, I was just going to ask him to clarify. This is a presentation. Are we making recommendations tonight?
We are possibly taking action on a recommendation tonight.
Okay, just on the South.
So if we just need a
Palin.
motion.
You can actually take action on whatever recommendation you like. So yes, we are going to take action.
Well, I would
I have
suggest,
one question.
I would suggest that we split it up with the LED and
Right.
whatnot, so.
Okay.
I have a
And
question.
everything doesn't have to be done tonight. I'll also
Right.
put that out there. Yes, ma'am.
So, has anybody spoken to the Education Foundation to see if they would actually be willing to handle the
Yes, Rebecca.
Hall of Honor?
At our last meeting, I basically pitched this to their executive group, not to the entire foundation, and they're very receptive to it because we might retain who gets selected and that sort of aspect of it, but the foundation can use this as a major fundraiser. They can have a scholarship dinner or a dinner honoring the people that are like inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that whole executive council seemed very positive about that possibility.
In fact, I got a text message from the outgoing president earlier today saying heard words where the Education Foundation has an alumni committee that is very interested in developing a Hall of Honor. Keep us in mind as you talk about options.
Awesome.
Yeah, so, I mean, a little bit of background on that whole deal is from day one, we had a committee that was discussing ideas when it comes to, from an Education Foundation perspective, discussing ideas on how to get alumni involved in the Education Foundation. It's always been somewhat of a roadblock in trying to figure out how to contact and gathering contact information and so on and so forth. So this seems like a perfect segue into being able to somehow have that singular point of entrance into the foundation for an alumni gathering and sort. So I like the idea of the Education Foundation. I love the idea of the naming convention on the schools. Thank you guys for all the work. I say I had 2 meetings, and I'm sure those meetings weren't short meetings because there are a lot
We
of
went over a little bit.
Well, there were little philosophical differences, right? There were a lot of things that people have great ideas, and when you put a committee of that size together, you tend to have longer discussions. So appreciate the time that you guys have put in there. I, for one, like all of the ideas, specifically the campus ideas, but the LED, the reason I asked about splitting it up is because that seems like a little bit, maybe it needs to take a little bit more thought. I think Sean had some good questions about that, kind of along the lines of where I was going, but I'll be open to taking action on the naming of the buildings tonight and splitting the signage and then rig naming.
Now, when it comes to the naming, if we made a decision tonight, the question of adding or dropping the G, how would that come into that
In the
decision?
motion.
Well,
We're to do something.
How about we authorize the renaming of the building
correct.
after Mr. Bullard, and then we ask administration to follow up to figure out whether or not we
Yes.
want to put the
Come
G
back on the
or not.
vote?
No, that'll be
name.
it.
Yeah.
Just on the name.
I
This
think
will be
we
it.
handle it.
we would get with
Yeah.
the family and see what their preferences are. And
Maybe they need
and,
to vote first, and then we'll.
Can y'all
Sounds
take a
like-
vote
I'll take
real
a vote,
quick?
and then we'll vote.
We're kidding. We're kidding. Don't worry about that.
No, we want to give you all time. Just give you time. Let them do it.
You said just do the initial
No, just-
GP Bullard.
GP Bullard building?
No.
But let's just take a time.
We'll get
Yeah.
back to you.
Yeah,
There you go.
absolutely.
There you go. Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
He's not here.
Okay.
We need it.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, if they wanted to wait until the whole family was present,
Well, I think what we can do
They're wanting,
is
they
No, they-
want to give
they
us a
want-
decision about the actual name.
Okay.
what
We're
they
gonna-
want. We can say we're going to name it after him. We're just gonna check with them to see how they want it
okay,
done.
cool,
right.
cool, I'm done.
All right, I'll make the motion, or Lance. If
Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Lance.
Go ahead, sir.
Go for it.
I'll make a motion.
Well, Lance started making a motion.
I wasn't making a motion.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sean.
Then I'll move that we name the South building after Preston Bullard, subject to how they want it written.
Second.
All right, that was a motion, Murphy, second, Decker. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously 7-0. All right, thank you all for your work. Thank you. All right, are there any other things the board would like to take action on tonight
Yep.
based on these recommendations?
Yep.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to make a motion to have the Hall of Honor created and maintained, developed by the Education Foundation.
I want to, hold on a second. We're not going to give it a name, but we're going to just, no,
Whatever-
I'm just asking.
The Hall of Honor, that's what in quotes, Hall of Honor.
Okay, but I mean,
Wait
they
for
could
the
call it
motion
something
and then
else. Do we have to
discussion.
call it?
No, I think, again,
That was my motion.
Wait for the motion. And
yeah,
then discussion.
your motion was to authorize the Education Foundation to develop, create, and maintain a Hall of Honor.
Yes.
That was your motion?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, there was a motion Decker, second Carbone. And now the question on,
No, my question was, is if she makes the motion, does it have to be called the Hall of Honor, or can it be called something else? I just want to make sure we're not stuck. Maybe there's several different
We can
things.
discuss it and amend the motion if that's.
well, no, just like where we were talking about with the name, let's just give them, let's not decide
What I'm
the,
Right.
trying to get to.
yes, but the Hall of Honor concept. Maybe if you would.
There, okay.
Okay, maybe
I
if you
can
would
amend my
restate your
motion to say the Hall of Honor concept.
Okay.
So I would like to make a comment. The school board nor the Pearland ISD has any jurisdiction over the control of that foundation.
Well, yeah.
So we can't dictate to them to go and create a Hall of Honor and.
But they
and
just
so on
said
and
that
so
they're
forth.
interested in it.
They said they would be interested in it.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go off and do it. We don't need to make a motion.
Yeah. We
You
can make a
can-
motion that we want to do it.
Well,
We can encourage. We can amend the motion to say encourage the foundation. To do
Well,
it.
somebody's
We can
gotta
create
But
it,
we
but we
have
can't
to-
say that they go off and do it. If they want to do it, they can go off and do it.
Where are they
going
going to put it? Where are they going to put it?
It has to be our
They
building.
have to be approved by us.
Yeah.
Do we also need then to add a stipulation about all names on there have to come before the board for approval?
Well, I don't think we should go that far, but I think the next step is.
concept.
Rebecca's motion handles it, is that
It's a
I would
concept.
then, or the administration would work with the foundation and see what they're willing to do as a group. They need to vote on this
Yeah.
Then they can
themselves.
come up to us.
Yeah, let
And
them
they
figure
may-
out what they
may
wanna
come
do.
up with the
Upon
better
their
name.
approval.
I said concept.
And I
Develop.
personally think that we should retain who gets honored. The foundation can have input into that, but I think that the school district should retain who gets selected.
We can supplement some money in there too.
The primary job of the Hall of Honor, of the foundation, would be that they can use this as a fundraising and recruitment technique, and
Concept.
possibly do the physical work out here when we establish it.
Is it at the ESC?
So
That's
I
my
Yeah,
other
just
question.
so
What-
then what's the point? I
I
mean,
said
we're
that, so
we're
they
actually
can-
creating it. We're telling them who to put on it. It's on our property. So if we just want to allow them to have a dinner to raise money for it, no big deal. Why do we have to mandate in stone that, oh, the foundation is going to have control and create and do all this other stuff? When I disagree with that.
Again, I think what we're doing is setting a framework, and we're going to ask administration to get with with Natalie Clarkson, our executive director, and kind of hash out the details. But the details don't need to be hashed out at this
So
time.
I think that the motion needs to be something along the lines of the fact that we agree to create a Hall of Honor, and however that happens, that happens.
Okay. The motion on the table is to develop the Hall of Honor, to authorize well, I guess I understand the problem with authorize, but we're saying to authorize,
Strike the authorization
Okay.
part.
Could we just add a collaboration? We'll be collaborate with the Education Foundation to develop the Hall of Fame concept.
how about we just take the motion off the table?
I
And just, yeah.
I remove my motion.
And we give administration our guidance to work with the Education
How about
Foundation
that?
to develop the idea of the Hall of Honor. And we will have the question about budget.
Mr. Palumbo, we talk about this Hall of Honor. Is that here? Is it PHS
Um,
and
You
got-
Dawson
you
individually? I
mentioned it
mean,
right
is
here.
it,
Our recommendation was to have it at the central office, just because we want to recognize anybody from Pearland ISD. And so our recommendation was actually this wall right out here, because there's a lot of real estate. You've got a long ways to go down that hall, and you can even carry it one way or the other if you needed to, or come to this side. And so we felt like it was a nice public place. We have so many recognitions that happen at school board meetings. Kids get to see and things of that nature coming in and out of the school board, out of the boardroom. And so that was our recommendation.
All right, so we've given administration our guidance, our thoughts on that. and they can move forward without a motion.
All right, so there is no
There's
motion.
no motion. Are there any other motions to come out of the?
I would like to make a motion that we rename the Pearland Stadium to Pearland ISD Stadium to be in more neutral territory.
Pearland ISD
Second.
Stadium. Okay, motion Carbone, second Decker. Sorry about that.
Well, that very question is the one I've been churning on in my mind because we are Pearland, overall Pearland. You know, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion.
Well, I guess can you clarify what Lance said? It's officially called that already. So is it?
No, it's not.
No,
It's
What is it?
right now it's labeled
Pearland
Pearland
Stadium.
Stadium, and the committee
Pearland
is
Stadium.
essentially saying you should really say that it's the school district stadium, Pearland ISD.
And I think it's partly because of the location. The building is on Pearland High School's campus, things of that nature. There's wanting to
So
be
they-
some delineation of this is actually a district stadium, is what was coming out of the committee.
If I could just add, the facade that you approved at, for the stadium, we actually did have Pearland ISD Stadium on the facade, so that is
remember
part
Oh.
of that package.
So if we rename it, I mean, is it going to do anything? I don't understand why.
No
It seems-
negative.
it
There's
seems
no
like
negative on this. It's just a
Yeah.
further clarification that it belongs to
On
the
Google
school
Maps,
district.
it'll say Pearland ISD
And
Stadium.
the naming that, I guess the sign that's out there now, when you walk up to the ticket booth, doesn't that say Pearland ISD Stadium?
No.
Uh-uh.
It says Pearland
Pearland
Stadium.
Stadium.
Okay, Pearland Stadium.
I
Okay.
just don't think anyone will notice the difference.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
probably-
it doesn't
Yeah, I
hurt
mean-
us at all to.
Other than when we
Dawson
build a new
does.
stadium.
Dawson, yeah, well, yeah.
Thank you, Bullard family.
Thank y'all very much.
See you guys. Other than when we build a new stadium over by the
So-
auditorium.
So, Galena Park Stadium that's on, North Shores campus is called Galena Park Stadium, and it's Galena Park ISD, but it's on North Shores campus. Letting you know that.
They have two stadiums.
They have
or
a
just
Galena
one?
Park High
They have
School?
an old,
Let's vote.
They have a Galena
Dement
Park High School.
Stadium. It's a soccer stadium now.
So we can vote, and if you guys don't like that, that's okay, but at least it's out there as a
There's a
recommendation.
motion and a second. So we need a.
And it will match the naming on the facade that is going to be built.
I'm
With that,
Switzerland.
that says it's Pearland ISD Stadium.
But
Okay.
the scoreboard now, just to clarify, the scoreboard now says Pearland Stadium, and it's in lighted letters.
And it also has,
Scoreboard, correct?
it also has ironwork on it that says the rig.
Yep.
No,
Whoa!
Yeah.
We're not
It
talking
does.
about the scoreboard.
Yeah. No, we're talking about what the current branding is, and there's still the ghost image in the turf of the rig. So,
So I have
yeah.
I don't have any skin in the game in this whole thing because I didn't graduate from Pearland, although I love Pearland. So I'm going to vote with Crystal regardless. But we've had this conversation many times about branding, right? And so we always go back to the idea of the colors and the rig or or the nest and all these different things. Is this our entry into this whole rebranding idea? Because you guys, we all just brought it up. Well, the scoreboard and other things associated with that. I know the colors are going to be changed with the updates of the press box and such, but
Are you talking about the rebranding that the communications department floated earlier? No.
I don't know.
No, he's not. He's talking about
Talking about the rig.
actual
I mean,
stadium.
sorry, the Pearland
Just the
ISD
name.
Stadium.
Yeah, he's talking about the stadium. So we had a conversation about what you would have to do to rebrand it. And in my opinion, I thought that we're talking about changing all of those things right now out there that say the rig, right? But that's not, I'm quoting Coach Pardo, and he's not here to correct me, but that was not where he was heading with the rebranding. It was more of a graphics and type deal, like what we're doing, right? So this, I think, is consistent with what his vision was as far as rebranding. Because, I mean, if you want to go in and talk about, I don't know how you clear that image off the turf, and I don't know how you go out and take the rig off the scoreboard, but I think that's past what we're talking about here tonight. That we can just change the name of the building, the official name of the building. That's what the motion is.
Okay, so we
on the
have
table.
on the building though that it's going to say Pearland ISD Stadium.
That's correct. On the facade, it will.
The motion matches that.
Okay.
Can we call the vote? Is that a thing?
Yes, that is a thing. All right. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. The name of the stadium is Pearland ISD Stadium.
Can we build a new one?
May I ask Mr. Palumbo, is there any other of the suggestions that the committee felt passionately about that should be brought up for consideration?
No, I think the two things, well, I say the three things. The three things were, we felt like honoring Preston Bullard, the right thing to do was put it on the south building. We said absolutely at this time, not naming the junior highs was not an option. And also if that's considered in the future, think about the financial and cultural impact to the campus and the stadium. Those are only big three things that we really discussed during that committee meeting.
Do we need to do anything to approve the LEDs on the outside of the
I would like to see a cost analysis of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Since we're in the design of that right now, the quicker you could make
Right.
a decision
So
on
can
that.
you,
Well, we don't have to make a decision to get PBK to give us cost analysis.
No, I mean, they can just, just do that as part of the package. I don't think it's gonna cost that much, but I could get.
yeah, we
exact-
need some
Exact dollars.
dollars.
Yeah, when are they looking at starting construction?
I mean, we're in design.
Monday.
Monday, all right. They're in design now.
We're in
Okay.
design now, that's why we need to,
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
a quick decision on that signage.
I'm not real comfortable with changing a project like that on the fly, like without knowing what it's going to cost.
Right, no,
And
we
so-
need to see the cost of
But
it.
so if you brought us something back in January, is that too
Well,
late
no,
to?
we can bring the cost back in December, that's not.
In December, excuse me. Okay, I forget it's November. Okay.
We have
Are we
plenty-
comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yay.
Does that conclude the item? Any other concerns, questions?
Mr. Palumbo's done such a great job. I was thinking we'd name the dais after him. Right here.
I'll take that on.
Good deal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Small-
Palumbo. Thank you,
small
Mr.
honor
Tibbetts.
as it
Thank
may
y'all
be.
very much. Mr. Richter, thank you as well.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the item on the facilities naming. Those of you who are here for the Culturally Responsive Committee, thank you so much for your patience. We're going to jump into the audit, and then we're going to maybe take a small break so we can refresh ourselves, and we'll get into this because this is very important. All right, we'll go to the audit. Item 1 on your regular agenda.
Good evening. My name is Wade Whitlow. I know many of you are used to seeing Kevin Cadenhead up here. We both had conflicting obligations tonight, so I drew the good straw and got to come see y'all tonight.
There you go.
I am a partner with KM&L. I've actually been the partner in charge of the audit for the past 3 years now. So this is my third year. We've been transitioning to a new partner from Kevin Cadenhead and then previous people affiliated with it. The audit this year was another successful audit. The first thing I'll talk about is when we engage to do an audit, we develop a plan, and within that plan, we have a lot of communication with the business office and other various departments around the district. Our plan gets pretty detailed at times, and we have an approach of coming in, getting our work done, and getting out as quick as possible, as to not cause a lot of disruption for the day-to-day operations that the district has. And that takes a lot of coordination throughout the district. And we were able to execute our plan flawlessly, and a lot of thanks and gratitude goes to everyone that within the district that helped make that happen on our end. For the audit itself, we have in the report that y'all have, we have 3 letters that we're issuing, and I'll go through each of those letters. The first letter is our opinion letter on the financial statements themselves. We're issuing an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion. That's the best opinion you can receive. That tells the reader of the financial statements that what they're about to read is materially and factually correct. Last year, we had a new standard that came into play, and then previous to that, there was another standard about 4 to 5 years ago that was issued that affected the district. We don't have any new standards this year that affect the financial statement, so the financial statement should read pretty comparable from current year to prior year. Throughout the financial statements, we didn't have any findings. I think this is the first year in quite a while that we haven't attached any of our adjustments that we've made in the past, and a lot of that credit goes to Georgiani and her staff. They work very hard and tirelessly to make sure that
they don't have any adjustments when we come in and perform the audit. The second letter near the back of the report is our report on internal control over financial reporting. So we use the control environment of the district and the controls that are in place to develop our audit procedures from a risk-based approach. When we're investigating the control structure of the district, if we notice any irregularities or anything that could cause potential harm to the district, we would note those as a finding in there, but we're happy to report that there were no findings as it relates to that report on internal control. The next letter that we're issuing is our opinion letter on compliance with major federal programs. We identified 2 major federal programs that we had to audit this year, which was Title I and the Emergency Impact Aid Grant. We had no findings, no compliance issues related to that. So within our compliance opinion letter, we're issuing an unmodified opinion over compliance. Within that letter is the same thing with the report on internal control over financial reporting. There's a report over compliance, and it's the same idea. We use the controls surrounding compliance to determine if there's any irregularities, and we did not identify any there as well. In the past, we've issued a client advisory letter, and those are things that don't warrant a finding in this report, but are more recommendational from the auditor's perspective. This is the first year that I can think of that I've been involved with the district that we didn't issue the optional letter that we'll call it for any client advisory comments. The last thing is y'all, as I'm sure y'all are aware, there's 2 excellence in financial reporting awards that the district receives from the Government Finance Officers Association, then the Association of School Business Officials International. To receive those awards takes a lot of work, and Georgiani and her staff do a tremendous job in gathering that information. They work very hard, and as I'm sure other people across the district, to compile that information to receive those awards. So with that, I'll wrap my presentation up. We just want to thank the board. You know, we enjoy serving the district and performing the audit, and I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Were there any questions?
I just have one.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's an easy one. How long does it take you to audit all of our financials?
So through the entire process, we begin our process in April.
Okay.
So we begin our initial planning phase in April, and then there's certain periods of time where it's a little dead from an auditing perspective, just because we're waiting for timelines to occur. But our initial auditing begins in April. We come out and do interim field work in May, and then we come out and do our year-end field work where we're actually auditing the financials and performing our procedures in September. And from September to now is when we're getting all this information together with the business office, and then determining what opinions we're going to issue and any findings and things of that nature.
You know, there was no reports, but were there any recommendations from the firm as far as the district goes?
We did not have any this year. There weren't any from an advisory standpoint that warranted mentioning in any of the letters that we issued. In the letter to the board of trustees that's also issued, it makes mention that we have discussions with management throughout the year for anything that comes up, but those discussions are made throughout the normal course of business. It's nothing that would impair our relationship or anything of that nature. But there was nothing that rose to the level of a finding that we needed to issue in here.
Can I ask how many partners are with KMNL?
5.
Okay. And how frequently do you rotate through rotating on the different districts that you audit so that you sort of have fresh perspective?
We try to rotate every 5 years from at the partner level. At our staff level, we'll try to rotate our staff in and out every 2 to 3 years. So the staff's coming in with the fresh eyes, just as you had mentioned. So we, at our staff level, we try to rotate a little bit sooner than the partner level, just because the partner transition takes a little bit longer than just bringing fresh staff out. With Kevin and I, it's taken about 2 years, and that's just Kevin knowing the nuances of the district and then allowing me to question anything he had and things of that nature. But the staff typically 2 to 3, and then partners 5.
So with all the non-findings with Pearland ISD, I'm going to say it like that, and I'm sure you do other districts. What, how I say this the right way, this is a good honor to have, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we are to commend, as a board and district, our financial gurus behind me over here. Okay.
Yes.
Because I'm assuming that not every district is like ours, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
The staff that the district has in place, I will say, in comparison to our other districts, and I don't mind saying this, is at a very high
I'm not
level.
asking you to say it.
Yeah, but it's the performance of the staff in place is at a very high level.
Just real quick, I mean, it's just kind of a high level, kind of along the same lines as Lance. So you guys work with several different districts, but you know, as it pertains to page 10 on the actual report itself, it's a pie chart. We're familiar with pie charts, I guess. But are there any percentages in those areas that kind of stand out, you know, with Pearland ISD as compared to maybe other districts? And I'm just talking about glaring issues that you see that percentages that may be different.
Nothing that really jumps out. I mean, I think across the board from a major class expense standpoint, I think you would see across most districts, due to the the restrictive nature of the state government and how funding works and everything like that, that you'll see that these are pretty consistent with other districts from a percentage standpoint.
You know, Jeff, one thing that helps with that you may want to look at is when we get what they now call the TAPR report, used to be the AIS in December, it looks at, for example, those pie charts, it looks at that and compares it to state averages for each of those categories. And that generally, and I've always been pleased with that because we generally tend to spend more on instruction as a percentage than the average Texas school district.
I got you.
You know, one of the things I want to say, and I bring that up for a reason, because we do so many great things in this district, and it gets overshadowed by some things that aren't as perfect as things like this, right? And so we in the school board, in the education business, have a hard time tooting our own horn, and it's been that way for a very long time. But yet people find faults in the things that we don't do. So I want to commend that staff for doing something, protecting the taxpayers' dollars and protecting this district with a great financial report.
Can I just add one more comment, if you don't mind, just specifically to Georgiani and the business office? I know this is the second CAFR that we've done in this kind of detail.
Phenomenal.
The third, yes.
I love it.
It's such a good user-friendly tool to share with the public in a way that really gives some detailed information in a visual manner. So I really appreciate the efforts that went into producing this document to give our public an awareness of what's going on. There were some really cool graphics about just the diversity piece and our LEP population, our limited English proficiency population, our economically disadvantaged, just talking about that a few board meetings ago and putting that out in a visual way is very helpful and much appreciated.
And
So
just
thank
to
you.
mention, this one is not audited, but it is reviewed by the Government Officers Financial Association, GFOA, and we've received the award 2 consecutive years, and we're submitting it for another award. So hopefully we'll get it.
And I noticed that it says draft in the documents. Is this something that I can share document?
You can share it. It says draft because it's not official until you approve it.
Okay.
So let's approve it.
Let's do that. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
All
that
right.
The audit of the 2018 to 2018 annual financial statements performed by the firm of KMNL LLC be approved as presented.
Second.
Motion Barry, second Carbone. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all very much for your help.
Great job, Georgiana.
All right, thank you. All right.
Well,
Yes, ma'am.
if I might just say, I just wanted to recognize my staff.
All right.
Stand up so we
To
can see you.
Sam, our Director of Accounting, Yvette Rogers, our Budget and Compliance Director, and David Popham, our Accounting Manager.
Oh, Joe Janie, real quick, I got a question. On the cover of this, I noticed there's 3 big leaves with the Pearland ISD. That represents the 3 high schools, and the pairs represent the 4 junior highs. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Attention to
right.
detail, Lance.
Okay, we're going to go
Impressed.
into report on the work of the Culturally Responsive Council. Does anyone need a quick break
Yes.
to refresh?
Yes.
No.
Yes? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.
3 minutes.
But y'all didn't pay attention.
What
say
happened to just
3
leaving?
23 leaves.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at 7:57, we will reconvene, and we will start with the report on the work of the Culturally Responsive Council. Dr. Miles, I see you at the mic.
I'm here, but
Yes.
I'm trying to locate where to find it in this wonderful, lovely.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, because it has the Pledge of Allegiance.
Since I shut out, closed everything.
Okay.
89.
Where?
Where's our technology people?
Because I don't see where.
IT, got a help ticket.
That's
Here we go.
There he is.
There it is.
That's not
No,
it.
that's not it.
Don't
I've
pull up
already-
the wrong
I've
thing.
already seen it.
I mean, I have my flash drive if you need. You need my flash drive? It should have been up there.
Yeah, it should have been.
We have it in our board book. I'm gonna put it on my book.
Got this new camera. Making sure my late standing people would get recognized. Lisa Nixon doesn't get recognized, she has to be here. Kidding.
Okay, I guess it's just recorded like that, other than I could have clicked through it, whatever, yeah.
So can we
Ticket
get
or
the
ticket?
PowerPoint loaded?
Is that what you
Can
said?
she load the PowerPoint?
Well, that's pretty good.
Say, did you say click it or ticket? What'd you say?
I did not see that.
Could we load it from the flash drive? Yeah, Dr. Miles, we'll get it loaded from the flash drive, your PowerPoint.
Want to knock out the HCAT deal?
Segovia.
Okay, while we're getting that squared away, good thought, sir. While we're getting that squared away,
Can we do this super
Yes, ma'am.
fast?
yeah, let's look at items 2. We'll start with item 2. Consider to adopt a resolution casting votes for directors of the Brazoria County Appraisal District.
I'll make a motion that we approve the adoption of the resolution as presented.
Second.
Second.
All right, there's a motion, Murphy, second, Decker. Is there any discussion?
This is for the
Brazoria County.
appraisal.
Brazoria County.
Right.
Burke County,
Brazoria County Appraisal District.
Page 49.
from board members that are on other school boards?
No, sir. This is for a person to sit on the board of directors of the organization that appraises property values in Brazoria County.
But the two members of that aren't part of other school boards?
No, this is, okay, you're talking about Harris County.
Yeah,
The Harris County, the Harris County one, those members are other
Okay, I
school
apologize.
boards. But this,
That's the next item.
right, that's the next item. This item is a resolution casting votes from Pearland ISD in favor of George Sanders to be nominated to that board or elected to that board. Yes, sir.
Well, and we took this vote last meeting, but that was, I guess, just to nominate him for this
yes.
vote.
Yes.
This time we're casting the votes.
Right.
As I did last time, I'll abstain from this vote.
Okay.
Can I ask why?
Yeah, sure.
Why are you abstaining?
I don't know George Sanders, and I'm not comfortable voting for somebody who I have no idea. I don't know his personal life or anything about him.
Had a month to call him.
Yeah, I mean, he had a month to reach out to me, so.
Okay. In his defense, he did reach out to the superintendent. I told him that we don't want to push it that hard, right? So he had given his interest, but I told him maybe he didn't need to push it that hard. But okay, so
That's fine.
we've had time to do due diligence. So there is a motion and a second on the floor.
Call for a vote.
All right, let's vote. All in favor? All, I guess, opposed or abstaining? Okay. Motion carries 6-0 with Trustee Floyd abstaining. All right, the next item is item 3, and I asked Dr. Kelly to present this, the consideration to vote for a candidate to be elected to the representative of school boards to the Harris County Appraisal District Board. And there are 2 individuals who reached out via email, which happens from time to time. We do have a small part of the district that is in Harris County, and I just wanted to present this. Maybe next year we'll be a little more diligent on getting information on these people. And so this is presented to the board for any discussion.
Have we participated in this vote in the past?
To my knowledge, my memory, we have not.
And that is because it's such a small portion that we
Yeah.
just said that we trust those people that have these relationships.
I will tell you the truth. I don't know that there's a reason behind it. It's just something that we just haven't put it on the agenda.
Dr.
in the
Kelly, are you
past.
making any recommendation on this?
No,
I mean, we're kind of.
I
Yeah.
continue to basically repeat what Crystal said. We have a very tiny representation on this board, and it's never come up to the board before. But Charles and I both received these 2 nominations, and then we got a third one on last Friday that I emailed to y'all of the 4 that are running for this one spot. So there's 4 people running for the one spot, and you've received 3 of those 4 people's information. If you want to vote, or if you don't.
We can take no action. I mean, again,
Yeah.
as Trustee Floyd said, I guess you're taking it based on the resumes that they sent you.
No personal knowledge of any of them.
The only thing I'll say about Ms. Dixon is that I reached out, one of my classmates from Leadership TASB is on the Humboldt School Board, and I reached out to her about Ms. Dixon. She had nothing but great things to say about her, so that's what I did reach out about Ms. Dixon.
I appreciate that. I did like what her resume and education. So I'll make a motion to cast our votes in favor of Martina Lamont Dixon.
Second.
All right, there's a motion from Gooden, second from Botkin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? That's 2, 3. All opposed?
I mean, are we?
Okay, so we'll leave that as a 3-0. That motion fails. Let me remind the trustees that technically speaking, our operations, if you
have to vote.
Charles,
Yeah.
if it was 3, I didn't
3-0,
watch
we
the
failed,
hands.
right?
3-0?
3-0.
Then
Well,
it passes.
Well, no, we don't have that's not a quorum of,
It
excuse me,
doesn't-
not a majority of.
Is there no one's voting
opposed.
against?
No one voting against. I think that passes.
Right?
Abstain.
Yeah, 3. Well.
I thought you can abstain. That's my biggest.
Yeah, no, the-
Abstaining, you're not voting.
Not voting.
Okay, so-
But how can we pass something with less than a quorum voted for it? I don't see how that can.
Because they've all abstained, but they're here
But
present.
we can't take motion. We can't take action on anything with less than a
Well,
quorum.
for example, if there was only 5 board members and you had a motion that was 3-2, it passes.
Right, but a quorum of the board is 4 people,
Can I change my vote?
and so.
We'd take another vote again.
Okay, we can take another vote. I move in favor of Martina Dixon. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Gooden and Bakken, I'm sorry.
No, I'm gonna vote against. Or sit out for it.
Botkin said second.
I seconded the
Right,
motion.
so we have the same motion again on the table. We're gonna call for a vote. All right, all in favor? Okay, that's 4. All opposed? 3. All right, 4-3, motion carries. Okay.
Thank you.
All
Sorry,
right.
I should know my rules
I
better
was
than
just
that.
gonna vote no, and then we would have 3-1, so then
Yeah.
it wouldn't have worked.
So, yeah, anyway. Okay, well, and I'll remind the board that technically speaking, if you're going to recuse yourself, you have to have a conflict of interest, right? Not just because you didn't get enough information or anything like that. But we're going to move right past that, and we're going to go into, finally, the report on the work of the Culturally Responsive Committee. All right.
Okay, hopefully we're up and ready to move. First of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share some of the work that we've done thus far. Before I even get into it, all of these lovely people, if they would all stand in this building, all of these representatives are part of the council.
Thank you all very much.
This is just a piece of them. So just to kind of, yeah, there we go, look. Lots of people saying, and Dr. Nixon also is a member of our council. So this whole purpose, the mission of the Culturally Responsive Council, in my mind and mind of our council, is to be proactive, is to create a stance that us as a district can move forward in a positive way, in a positive light for the district. So we believe that it starts at the top and has to filter down. So we felt it was important to share the efforts that are already in place at the district level. Dr. Kelly is sharing a book right now with his senior cabinet members titled Courageous Conversations About Race by Glenn Singleton. Very important that we understand having some of these difficult conversations are easier for some people than others. So we empower each other. The more we hear it, the more we listen to it, the more we're aware of it, makes it a little easier for us to share or have those difficult conversations. Again, Culturally Responsive Council was formed. We've completed some training under the leadership of Dr. Michelle Izquierdo on September 3rd, titled Narrative and Norms. This was an amazing training that 4 to 5 members of each campus participated in some extensive work on what it feels like to join a campus as a newcomer, as an ESL student. And she really acclimated us to some of the differences that we have to make in order to make people feel accepted and to welcome newcomers to a campus so that they don't feel like they're isolated and don't feel disjointed from their learning. We feel it's important to embrace that mindset and then offer her to come out and complete some more trainings with more members of our district to help us share that same message of acceptance and diversity and what it looks like. Thus far, the council has presented 3 times. The first was at our leadership retreat, Always Growing, where we had our very own Dr. Vaughn and Dr. Franco Freundmeyer and Mrs. Berenson. They provided an overview of the mission for the council, the purpose of the council, why it was originally established. No secret to anyone on the board, our demographics in the district have shifted over time. My time here as a principal, even as a campus principal of Rogers and now at West, my 5th year at West, my campus demographics have totally shifted. So my minority is no longer my minority, it is the majority. And those types of numbers, the demographics, the diversity, force us to look at things differently when we are trying to make sure that our kids feel like they have a part and a role to play in school and that they feel like they're accepted. So that started the presentations of the council. And September principal meeting, myself and Dr. Allen provided an overview of the council's mission, of the purpose as shared by Dr. Kelly. His vision was very simply put, I brought it to share. Pearland ISD will serve as an evolving and continuing example to people everywhere of the accomplishments and appreciation possible for our diverse students and staff. Perfect vision and mission. And we thought it was important that everyone understood what the purpose was and what the mission was. In September, later, towards the end of the month, we were able to invite our community members and parents to join us in that council. We do have at least one of our members that are here with us today so that we could get input from the community, find out what their perceptions are so that we're able to take those perceptions and really invest some time in figuring out what it's going to take to move all of us forward. So thus far, our council has been doing lots of research. We feel at this point that restorative is the way that we need to be thinking. Most of us have experienced Dr. Gay Lang's training in Austin. Amazing presenter. We spent 3 days there really practicing what it looks like to spend time building community, build trust, and to help us, even as administrators, a lot of us were administrators and counselors, help us learn to bridge gaps with difficult groups. And that started the whole idea of we need to figure out how we can take this concept and bring it to life for us. So why should we even use that model? Number one, we need kids to be able to understand that there's empathy behind causing harm. We have to bridge that gap, to listen and respond to the needs of people who are hurt, and sometimes the people that hurt, to encourage accountability. I think that's a mission of the board, of course, and then to reintegrate the harmer into community as a valuable contributing member. We all make mistakes. Everybody deserves a second chance. We have to be able to reintegrate them in as valuable people, contributing members of society. Number 5 and 6, we believe, are the most important reasons why restorative is best practice. To create caring climates to support healthy communities. And then number 6, to change the system when it contributes to the harm. It's hard to really say you want to fix something that's not broken. We believe Pearland is moving forward, making great strides. But as our diversity changes, as our culture changes, as all these we have an influx of new people joining us in our district, we have to be able to meet them where they are and make them feel like they're still in control of their learning. Right now, we like to say we're doing a good job there, but we sometimes fall short. And we want to make sure that we're equipping our staff, equipping our teachers, equipping people with the skills that we need to feel confident and comfortable having those difficult conversations and building culture, building a conducive setting for learning to continue to flourish. So currently what we're doing is we're sharing relevant literature and principal meetings. We are creating data banks and teams in Office 365 that house articles that talk about everything from prejudging people just by how they look versus who they are and not even giving them a chance. We've looked at many TED Talks and what those courageous conversations look like, video clips, media presentations, having those resources accessible to campus leaders so that they can share them a lot more freely. Oh, wrong button. Oh, let's take that. Where did that come from? There we go. I'm trying to move us through here. I got you. There we go. Currently, at our campuses, that we have many things going on in leadership trainings. We have teams that are presenting privilege walks, scavenger hunts, multicultural literacy nights, wax museum showcases that celebrate diversity, interviewing questions, so that now we're asking some of those questions that we may not have been confident enough to ask before. But we're asking, how do you treat a classroom where you have diverse learners? What do you do? We're asking some of those hard conversations. Supporting ESL certification for all teachers, mentoring, Circle Up Time, sharing articles, and partnering with CIS to host lots of forums in more than one language. I Will 2.0 statements, infusing language objectives into our content so that teachers now are becoming aware that just because we have a content to get through, we have to figure out the other forum as to how to get it out to students who are not quite where everyone else is. Fiesta Nights of Learning, Hispanic Heritage Month, African American History Month, holidays around the world, translating information to Spanish, and again, RISE mentoring. At our junior high campuses, personally at my campus, anything we've talked about in CRC is fair game in my campus. I spend time talking about these relevant articles. I'm probably one that's a lot confident. We have a different level of confidence when it comes to having those bold conversations with people. We don't shy away from the truth. We have to address things where they are. And when we try to sugarcoat it or make it pretty or try to appease people in talking to them, we wind up in a stuck situation. So I try to be very upfront and open with my campus, with my teachers, with my counselors, with my APs, so that they understand we are not going to hide. We're going to say things truthfully, tactfully, so that people feel where we're coming from. So I think a lot of that's happening at almost every junior high campus. Campus CRC councils have been formed, campus book-wide studies on restorative practice, how to create those community circles. Again, cultural heritage months, awareness opportunities, character strong curriculum, words of wisdom, character lessons, grit and growth mindset. Never let go of that. That was my doctorate. I spent a lot of time talking about the growth mindset because it is the same mindset with the growth mindset that also lends itself to culturally responsive leading and learning. If I have a growth mindset, it changes how I interact with people. Similarly, if I'm culturally responsive, it changes how I interact with people. So embracing those two make it easier to have those difficult moments when they come up. And it's the efforts of the council to be proactive with this and not reactive when something happens. We want to equip people with the confidence to be able to do it successfully. Already some people are innately born able to do it, but we believe that with training and more opportunities, we can acclimate many to be able to do it confidently and competently. Again, 6 out of the 8 junior high campus principals have already attended all of that restorative training and have become trainer of trainers. So we're really excited about moving that forward. How about at our high schools? Brain study on boys. It's no secret that discipline, there's a track that we see. We want to make sure that we're consciously aware of those things. Our restorative practice committee and PBIS, we have partnered with them because it's some of the same concepts that we're studying in our culturally responsive learning as well. Workshops on cultural bias, narrative and norms, mini sessions, career talks, military recruiters, trying to make sure we have a diverse presentation forum. We're not showing you just one type, we're showing you everyone, a picture of what it looks like all over the world. Restorative practice, check-in, community grit circles, campus-wide agreements, party on the patio. Again, cultural heritage months are happening at every campus, and they are sometimes initiated by the student-led organizations. I thought that was very powerful. So, next steps. What we think is a good way to move forward for us in Pearland is to first of all continue to train our employees to make sure that we are up to date with what restorative looks like. We believe restorative is the way to go. We can't keep thinking ISS, OSS, putting kids out is the way to get the best out of kids. We have to be able to sit and feasibly talk through culture, talk through how do we make it right What do we need from you? What do you need from us in order to help you function better as we re-immerse you back into the classroom setting? We need to be able to train people to do that. Izquierdo's mission was to acclimate cultural differences and awareness, but we believe Dr. Gay Lang's way is a model that we can use throughout this district. We will continue researching and sharing relevant information at all of our meetings, but what we feel most proud of is to be able to partner with our district leadership team they have already drafted the new PBIS model to take it to the secondary level now. Because PBIS is in our elementary schools. It's those 3 simple rules: be safe, be responsible, be respectful. We believe we can take that same concept and springboard it forward and use that same mindset in our middle schools, junior highs, and high schools to then create a framework of culturally responsiveness that is embedded into what we do and not some isolated little piece that just sits out in the wind. We believe it needs to merge together, to be a way that we operate, a way that we function, a mindset that we operate from. So I want to kind of show you what this framework looks like. If it probably won't come up, yeah, but I have it up. You probably saw pieces of it, but I've asked.
It's in our board book.
We have it.
You have it?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
You have the framework?
Yes.
So if you look at that framework, there's 10 basic steps, those areas. But what we'd like to do is immerse the culturally responsive piece into each one of those portions so that it becomes an embedded way and not just an isolated entity. And because the leadership team is right now in draft mode and they're working on this framework, I'm part of that committee. Lots of these people are part of that committee as well. We're integrating that process so that it becomes one collective piece. And it helps us drive the whole idea of culturally responsive leading and learning into a practice, a process, a way of thinking, a way of operating, versus something we just check off a box and say we've done it. Oh, here's our toolkit, we have it. It becomes a way. The pyramid of interventions, if you look at on that very far right column, one more vein to that pyramid, we could then stretch out culturally responsive leading and learning at the universal level. Every teacher in our district can be trained to build community in their classrooms if it's something we expect and something we respect. We believe in building culture, building that climate. Teachers feel comfortable then now so that none of those things that we kind of superficially talk about, it's real. We take the time to do it because we can't afford not to do it. We have to take the time to have those conversations, have kids feel like they're connected so that they have a voice, they have a say. The values that we talk about and bring up in these cultural circles become anchors in the classroom. So that when we're talking and we're teaching, we can then go to honesty and go to integrity and go to these words that then we've built as a culture in these rooms to help move us along a continuum. So when kids make mistakes or they do something that doesn't make sense, we have something that we can ground ourselves to. So what we feel is that our next step as the council is to take the framework that has already been initiated by the PBS model and our district leadership team, is take our culturally responsive council now and branch out and look at each one of those elements and then provide action steps from a culturally responsive stance that supports the model. Because we believe the restorative, that piece can be integrated into a framework and it becomes a way that we function as a district and not something, an isolated piece that we just kind of do because we should. It becomes a way we think. It becomes the culture. It becomes a mindset that we operate from. That was my last slide, which, yeah, good. In, exit, there we go. That last slide, it just simply says, it's a process, not a program or a plan. It is a mindset. It's not a prescription. It's gonna take time. Where we are now, it took time. Over time, we are a great district. We already know that. But if we're gonna continue moving forward, we're gonna continue to make changes, we're gonna continue to embrace the newness of our changing demographics, we're gonna have to take a stance and really start digging deeper into some of those things that appear to be surface for some, but continue to be embedded for others. And we have to break those barriers. As educators, like I said, it's easier for some of us to do it than others. But if we empower people and we train them and we spend more time having those difficult conversations, we can do it. It's gonna take time and effort and work. And we believe our children are worth it. We believe this district is worth it. We think having a great representative population to help us make these action steps will be something that we can live by, something that we can move forward with. So,
Question.
Yes, any questions? Thank you very much, Dr. Miles and the rest of the group. Thank you all so much.
Mr. President.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I make a suggestion that we take each of our comments and isolate it in some kind of organized fashion so that we're not talking over each other? Because I know a lot of us have some very passionate thoughts and questions that we want to get through in our own right, and it'd be helpful if we had some kind of systematic way to do that.
Sure, we'll go from left to right, and we'll just let you start with the.
Mr. Barry wanted
No,
to.
Did
you
you- I'm
probably
sorry,
have a
didn't
lot
you?
more questions than I do, so
Let's go.
go for it.
All right.
You okay?
I'm gonna dig in. Dr. Miles, you said that it was okay to be honest and to
I'm
like,
ready.
dig
Yes,
in.
ma'am. And I have lots of help
Yeah,
over here.
y'all want to come on up? And if
We have lots of
and if
help.
you have input, please,
Absolutely.
we'll need you to speak into the microphone so that you can be recorded.
And first, let me start
Thank
by
y'all.
saying I appreciate each and every one of you, not only for the work that you do on each of your campuses, but you ladies and gentlemen are powerhouses in your own right. And the fact that you've stayed up here this late after working all day and the extra work that you put in to be a part of this committee is very much appreciated. So from the bottom of my heart, and I think everybody up here, thank you very much. And I get the feeling after hearing Mr. Moody has given me a little bit of feedback about sort of the tone of the meetings and the way that you guys are kind of grappling with how do we implement this and what's our grand framework and scheme, that these have been some really in-depth conversations and some things that have been very meaningful to you guys. And I wholeheartedly appreciate what you're saying about it's going to take time to really move the district. And what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this culturally responsive committee is not something that you see lasting forever as a committee itself. It's a group to help our entire culture of our district kind of shift.
I think what we envision, and tell me if I'm not speaking for everyone, I think what we envision is that culture is not some out in the wind topic that's just floating around. It becomes integrated into a way. That's what we envision it as. And if it means the council has to continue, then it continues.
Right.
But I believe that's what I think we feel, that it needs to be connected to who we are as a district, not something that's an isolated entity.
So, coming from that and kind of standing in the gap between like the ISD and the community, and one of the biggest critiques of our culturally responsive committee is that it doesn't have as much parent representation as what some would like to see as a part of that group. And when I hear you talk about being proactive versus reactive and talking about completing circles and those kinds of things, one of my like great visions for the way this culturally responsive committee would work is like that we would have a circle with our community, that we would
we're there,
that we would say, you know, we're not afraid to have these conversations, bring it on. Like, we're not going to heal and move forward and be the community what we hope to be without digging in and like just bring what you got. Let's talk about it. But where do you guys see?
Well, we had, our first meeting the meeting where we invited parents and family. Oh, yes, I was gonna say that too. When we invited them, we gave them free rein. Tell us what you feel are burning issues in the district. What are those things that we need to visit as the council? And those things that we are working on. So, that was definitely part of that first meeting. We have a meeting now scheduled on the 20th, and the agenda is already written. The very first bullet is circled up. They will experience the power of what a circle looks like. So we thought it was important to let them feel what it looks like so that they'll know this is what's going to move us. Because if they see it, then those freedoms, anything you need to say is able to come out.
Yes.
And I do think it's valuable. It is an invaluable experience.
But what about those parents that might have some concerns that were not kind of invited to the table?
Well, I think as a district, we're always going to have some outliers that we're never going to hear everyone's perspective.
Right.
I think we have lots of vocal people that I think represent pockets of people. I think our campus administrator, we have our own PTA people that are quite vocal and versed. I think we take all of those efforts collectively and are able to then use all of those elements and literally attack them one at a time.
So that maybe an opportunity is those that aren't invited at in the room, find those people on their campuses and share their concerns so that they can bring them to the table as kind of a representative on their behalf.
I think some people are timid and may not say it, but it becomes a little festering argument out here and blows up. But eventually, it's gonna come out. And I think we see a lot of it. We hear a lot of it on social media. We see a lot of it on lots of Facebook and West Parents and all of those.
So you're taking all those things into consideration
We
and
have
adding
to.
them
I mean,
to your
their
list.
perception is a reality. So
Right.
we try to engage time spent on all of those things as well.
Awesome. Let me think. I have all kinds of things. So one of the other things you talked about was being proactive versus reactive. And is there a component, I guess, one of the other things that I've heard out there that's kind of a critique of our district is that people are afraid to bring things forward. People are afraid, based on retribution or fear of retribution or how they're going to be treated, that they don't want to bring the truth of their experience forward. And I grapple with how to open those doors so that see something, say something happens in a
Right.
cultural way, not just about psychological issues or about guns or physical violence, but it's something that we can open the door to say we want to, if we don't know better, we can't do better. So we want you to bring those things forward.
Well, I think we start by being transparent. I think we all try to do a good job of that as campus leaders. We try to be very transparent and open that door within our own little pods and places that we operate from. I think the board does a great job at that. I think the more we talk transparency and the more parents in the community feels like they can come to us with things that are burning, passionate things, and they see that we are addressing it, they will be more apt to come out with it.
Right. And I guess my last question to wrap up, at least from my part for now, is there anything that we can be doing as a board to support your efforts and to support your work in a tangible way?
Well, we think research on restorative practice, 100%. I think if you even take an ounce of time to look at some of Dr. Gaylang's work and what that looks like and what the practice, what the end-all, be-all to restorative practice looks like, we believe that is the way we have to go. It's going to change the face of what we've done in the past to how it can evolve as a district. Yes, yes.
Hello, you all. Another thing too, we shared this book with Dr. Kelly as well. If you get the opportunity, the Little Book of Restorative Discipline for Schools is a great way to get started. $6.99 on Amazon. Great way to get started. Our campus, a lot of our campuses are doing book studies with our leadership team, our department leaders, because this is the way we think our district should go. If you all get the opportunity to be a part of the training that will be taking place with in May with our district leadership team, I think it's very important to see how it truly works and how I feel not only for our students, but how it's going to bring our leadership teams on our campus together and make us a lot stronger. As we know, and we fall back on discipline. We know discipline is some of the issues we hear where we hear topics brought up about race. Let's be very honest about that. And it kind of can make us stagnant at times. So this, I think, will help us move forward with these learning about restorative practices and being able to implement this on campuses and move it forward. So if you get the opportunity, please feel free to reach out to those of us who have had the training so that we can sit down with you and discuss any questions you may have. I'll turn it back over to our.
Or feel free on our meeting on the 20th and to experience a circle. We will do a circle in our council meeting on the 20th. I've had Kim Darden, who at her campus, she circles up every Monday. It is a campus initiative. So she's pretty well versed in the process. I've asked her. We've actually talked back and forth about a good way to walk through it to get some comfort, a level of openness with our parents and community that have joined us. And we've since then been able to just have a little more freedom with how we navigate sensitive issues. I think that's the number one thing, is that we will have some confidence in being able to tackle these hard topics that we tend to shy away from.
But I guess that goes into my very last.
That was like being proactive versus when something happens, then we just blow up.
Right, and I guess this is my really generally last thought, and then I'll let you guys. But you guys have always been here and a part of this conversation about proclamation, resolution, and my thought as we continue to grapple with how do we best support every student and meet every student where they are, and not get caught up in the infighting and a board about how we can be a powerful tool for a beacon of hope for the district surrounding us. And for me, that comes best from you guys. If you had a statement that you wanted to put out to say, here, community, this is what we feel about this is where we're going, this is what we stand for as a district, and you wanted us to get on board with that, I mean, of course we don't support white supremacy. Of course we don't support racism. And how do we get behind and bolster the work and efforts that you guys are putting in? Just a food for thought. I think it'd be a powerful statement of unity in the work that we're doing moving forward.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, who would like the floor next?
I'll be brief. Crystal took all my thoughts, but well, first of all, I just want to say, Dr. Miles, thank you and your team. I know you guys go in early, work all day, and then this is another piece of what you do beyond what we require of you to do with your students. The only comment I'll make, and I'm just not an expert, but when we talk about restorative justice,
practice.
Is there any implementation? You see or hear so many times, if I talk to teachers about families, if when I talk to teachers, it's that you can practice this at school, you can discipline, but by the time they get home, doesn't matter, 2-parent, 1-parent culture, if the follow-up is not there, if they're defending the actions of the bad behavior from their child, then it's hard to get that buy-in. So how do you make that a part of the buy-in to help with this? But anyways, that's kind of a opinion comment, not really a question.
I think that's going to be a struggle regardless, because we fight home life and everything we do in school. But I think the more empowered we are as campus leaders, and the more I think that when we can really get to the crux of what it is, then kids will start to internalize it's what I do even apart from home. It's some of our conversations about switching that we learn to navigate when we're here. This is what is appropriate and this is right, versus when I'm over here. and they start learning that. It's something that's taught. I don't want to get into it so deeply because it would take forever, but I believe the more that we spend time building that climate in our campuses that foster, what did I do? How did this affect other people? How can I make it right? And we equip teachers to really buy into it, because right now they don't. Most teachers, when kids do something wrong, they want them in trouble all day. So we have to first get across that hurdle. And once we reach that hurdle, then we can start really getting that out to our kids. And I think they will then embrace what I do here looks a little different from the way I respond at home. And yes, my parents may be supporting me to do the wrong thing. Eventually, they will start internalizing right versus wrong. That's, I would think, our utopian goal for the whole process.
Good. Thank you. And thank you guys for all you do.
Okay, this is the second time that I've heard this, and I just want to applaud all of you coming together, because it is a difficult subject at times to discuss, and everybody has different opinions and biases and all that kind of stuff. So that being said, and you used an example in the last presentation that I heard from you of a time that that you actually used a circle on your campus with students. So I'd like you kind of to share that one again, as
Okay,
well
which
as
one was it? I don't remember which one.
It was a teacher that said, "I'm done."
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay, but there's two parts to that. So I'm wanting to know how your teachers are responding to what you're bringing to them, and I know that you had said that they're not really buying into it. So what kind of things are we doing to help them buy into this?
That's good.
And then what role are our counselors? With the support for you guys, because I know that discipline usually is the APs and whatnot, but how is it becoming a teamwork effort? I mean, how are you implementing this with your counselors? How does this look on a campus, and those kind of things?
Yeah, let me share that little example with the class. So no secret that I did have a teacher that just one day said, "I'm not coming back to work. It doesn't matter what happens, this day is my last day." When that happened, I had my student support counselor and myself, we went into the classroom and we conducted a circle with this really volatile class. It was the last period. This class was determined that they would run anyone out that showed up in there, because the teacher had already told them that they were bad and that pretty much they were worthless, so they had to live up to that. So upon our circle with them, we completed what's called a respect agreement. And what you do in that respect agreement, everyone gets to go around the circle and they tell what they value, what they need, what they want, what they're looking for. Same time, the teacher has the opportunity to do that as well. But after completing that circle, all the kids, we do a T chart, what the teacher needs, what the students need, and this elaborate chart then laid out what they were looking for in the teacher. They wanted a teacher that was firm. They wanted a teacher that was credible. They wanted a teacher that would not let them get away with things. They wanted a teacher that was hardworking, but that loved them and cared about them. So we took that circle, and then I interviewed, which I kind of fabricated my story a little bit and told them I interviewed 50 people for the position. And it took me a long time to really narrow it down to find exactly what they were looking for. I made sure I looked for what you asked me to bring you as a teacher. And when I walked in and presented that to them, the teacher's been there 2 days and they are in love. It was changing the culture of what was there. So that was the power and the beauty of a one-shot little fix on kids having a little say, a little voice to say what they needed. Teacher pretty much told them, "What you need from me, I can't give you, so I'm going to have to explore some other options." I said, "Yes, ma'am, you will." And that's what happened. Needless to say, the teacher then, like I said, the teacher that is in there now, I clearly kind of talked it out with her, and it's been a good little partnership thus far. It is a hard group, but she walked into it with a different mindset. that it was going to be tough. I know I have to build culture in this room. I have to make sure they understand I'm here for them. What they need from me, I'm able to give them, and it's growing. So what it looks like now for my counseling team, thank goodness my student support counselor has already been through the training as well. So that's why it was so easy for us to partner up. My counselors are already taking up slots from some of these lovely people because Gay Lane will only train 4 people from a district at a time. And soon as I walked through the door, I said, get on the list. So my 2 counselors they're going in December, and my 2 APs are going in January. So I think then growing that team, because what Dr. Lang shared with us, and this is very powerful, and we all know it, if you just walk into it and say, oh, well, we're doing restorative, it's restorative, you can't use that word loosely. It is destined to fail. And that's what I think we've done, because we were all talking it, and it was a buzzword, and yeah, we're going to do restorative. But it wasn't set up for success. So I think we have to plant the seeds for success. That is through really good quality training from Lang and from Izquierdo, because her perspective was beautiful. She gave us a whole different piece that told us how we had to be sensitive to new people joining us and what we think may not always be their reality. And those 2 pieces together, I think, is a beautiful way to bring in and have our staff buy in. They have to feel the circle. They have to see it. They have to experience it. And thus far, they really haven't.
And I think the key thing that Dr. Miles, too, that we learned, too, is restorative is just not to correct. It's not just to focus on just discipline, but it's also to prevent the discipline from happening. So it's not to wait until something happens. It's to get kids and our teachers to have that buy-in, to have ownership of it, and then think about before they make that choice. So that's something to remember. So it's coming from that point of being proactive with that. When we make the statement that teachers don't have buy-in, it's the fact that they don't know enough about it yet to have that buy-in. So they're leery, like anything new to us, we kind of question, and they're like, it's one more thing.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
But as we continue to have the conversations, like we said, a lot of the campuses are having the book studies. Some of them are trying to implement little pieces of it themselves already in the classroom. The main thing, it's tiers. It's tiers. The circles are tiers. Our classroom teachers will be responsible for a tier 1 circle, and that is basically just creating a culture in the classroom. That is all we will be asking from them to do at that time, setting up what the expectations are in the classroom, doing things like that, and making the students have ownership, holding each other accountable. If they do something wrong, not always the teacher redirecting them, but the students, hey, man, or hey, friend, that's not appropriate. We don't act like that in Miss so-and-so's class, making that kind of community. And then the next tiers are where the counselors step in and the administrators would step in during that time when harm is caused by someone. So it's really going back to learning each other, respecting each other, going back to their cultures, why they may feel certain ways, and having those uncomfortable conversations. But the key thing is remembering it's there to prevent the action from happening, not just responding after something has happened.
Mr. Bakken?
So I got out of teaching and coaching to work for the TEA and to go around the state and help the hardest to teach and hardest to reach kids, mostly at-risk youth. So we had a program that's called CBISS. They just put a fancy word to restorative. I think I say restorative is a great word, but they've just changed it up over the years, right? So I've always believed in when teachers care about kids, they're going to do and whatever you want. I've always believed in our job as educators is we have to not only educate kids, but we have to raise the kids. And people disagree with me. I've been saying this for as long as I can remember, because when parents go home, they don't always educate their kids, and they don't always discipline their kids. They're trying to decompress. Our society has completely changed in 20 years, and so we as a district need to change also. But anyway, so when I taught this restorative, what they call it, is a little different. I left it because I loved it. And, I left, teaching at Pearland High School and coaching because I love this. I love, the team concept, because that's really what it is. When I played for 16 years football, there was no cultures inside of a team. The team was the culture. Didn't make a difference what background you came from. We all had a common goal, and there's something bigger than ourselves. And so all this goes together with teachers caring. And where we've gotten away from in education is you know, people want to blame it on the test, people want to blame it on money, people want to blame it on everything. Is much like I said before when I asked for student support counselors or mental wealth counselors, I want our teachers to go and get back to why they want to be teachers. Okay, and I said that about being as a counselor, and we moved that direction already, and we already seen the massive effect, right? And we're going to move forward. So I speak your language. I could probably teach this class. Still have the books at the house. I distinctly remember one kid that was in Midland. It was in Midland, Texas, and the superintendent was there, and nobody could discipline him. And I simply walked up to him, put out my hand, and they had a dress code back then. They had a tuck in his shirt. He had to have an ID on, had to have his earrings off, and he had to be clean shaven. He had a shirt untucked, no ID. ID was in his back pocket. He had almost a full beard, and nobody could get him to do anything. And I simply walked up to him, put out my hand, and it was an African American young man, and he looked at me like I had a third head. And I turned to the side, and I just kind of whispered in his ear. I said, "Look, if we're going to have a great day today, you and I are going to have to respect each other, and I'm going to respect you right now." And so from that point forward, I leaned over and I leaned his ear, and I whispered, I said, "Hey, I need you to be the leader of my group, okay? Can you do that for me?" And he says, "Absolutely." And I said, "Okay, let's restart this again." And I put out my hand again. He shook my hand. I said, "Can you do me a favor? Can you tuck in your shirt, put on your ID so we can get along with everybody else, take out your earrings?" And that's 100% what he did. And so it's all about the approach. Sure. It's all about showing that I actually respected him, and, you know, and he cared. And that's where, we just lose focus sometimes in any job, right? I mean, you can take in any banking and any restaurant business, does not make a difference. Sometimes we lose our focus, and we got to regain our focus. And I appreciate y'all going and learning this from Dr. Lang. I've seen several of her videos with her TEA, and it's encouraging, and, you know, it's just going to hopefully get teachers back to what they went to school for, right? To help kids, right?
We've had those conversations. It seems like when we became teachers and educators, we realized this was the hardest job ever.
Right.
We knew that. We knew it was going to take us to bloody knuckles, whatever. I mean, I've been to war and back, so I already know what that looks like too. But we embraced the hard work that was in front of us, and I don't know if a lot of the teachers coming into the profession have that same mindset. So we got to grow them. I mean, if they're here to do the job with us, we have to respect it, inspect it, lay it out for them, prepare them, train them up, inspect it, respect it, and keep modeling it, and keep demonstrating it, and keep doing it. It becomes a cycle.
So
in a way.
in the model with the discipline at the high schools and in the junior highs, does this model, and I haven't found it yet, does this model, you know, I used to call it 3 hots and a cot when you go to the ISS room, right? And so you just go there and get some work done, teachers pass it on. We built CBISS rooms where they actually gained points to get out, and they were respectful, and they learned all the 7 core values to get out, and if they were put in there for 3 or 4 days, they had to earn their way out. Is that model in this restorative discipline or something like it?
Has nothing to do with consequences or any of
Okay.
that. It is only in
Not a point-based system or
establishing
anything?
the culture
I got
and the
you.
climate, and then reconvening kids back into after harm is caused, or in the event a kid is sent to ALA or JJAP for 60 days, 30 days. How do we reacclimate them back to the district? Instead of just send them, okay, go back to class, do what you're going to do, and what happens 3 weeks later?
It's a vicious cycle. They're going to come back because that's where they feel comfortable.
But these circles then with trained people invite a district representative, a teacher, the parents, everybody sits in
Like
this
RTI.
forum, and we talk it out. almost like the respect agreement. What do I need from you? What do you need from me? What does this person need from their math teacher? What does this person need from the district assistant superintendent in order to make their transition successful? All that's laid out, and then people hold them accountable. It's that accountability piece. I'm gonna come in and check on you, son. I'm gonna need you doing your part. If you're not doing your part, we're gonna have to talk it out again. And
But-
then we come back to the circle.
Yeah, but when they're sent to, if they have to go to, I don't know what, or even an in-school type of suspension.
That's where the work is. That's
Okay,
what we're
and are they doing something to, like, they have to earn their way, like, not only are the
currently.
respectful
Not
portion,
now.
not yet, but that's, at that
I
stage?
think that's the journey.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm asking, that's where it's, that's where it's, okay. Because that's what we taught, that's what I taught, how to do that. Okay.
Now, Ms. Decker asked a question that I'm not sure, and she stepped out. I'm not sure that we've answered it completely. And it's the one about how do we get the entire staff to buy into it? And we start with a small group. We start with a group that buys into it. And that group would generate the success that the others will watch, the others will experience and watch that success, and then they want to be a part of it. So that's how it works. And that's how we get the entire campus to buy into it. So we start with a smaller group and radiate out.
Thank you. You answered my question, it's, that's kind of what I figured would be a next level stage on that.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Floyd?
Thank you, Dr. Miles, for the
Sir.
presentation. I know it's 9 o'clock. I really do appreciate you and all of you staying here to have this conversation with us. Don't want to make you feel old, but you were
I
my
am.
principal when I was in 5th and 6th grade.
I am
She
old.
lived to tell the story.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm
and
embracing
I
the
will
day.
never forget when you had hundreds of 5th and 6th graders standing up in the
Remember?
cafeterias. You were teaching us how to salute.
Yes, I did.
It was inspiring. You created a culture that I think should be a model. You were a great principal then, and I hear you're a great principal now. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your service. We've heard a lot about the problems with students, and obviously there's no bigger advocate for restorative justice. I'm a huge advocate for it. I actually went through training with the Harris County Department of Education in Fort Worth
Right.
about restorative justice and additionally diversity and sensitivity and inclusivity training so that we could see prejudice, see our own internal biases and start to
Yeah.
address them.
That's where we are.
Again, I heard a lot about, I think I heard you earlier say, you know, when kids make mistakes, we talk about pushing them through restorative justice. But one of the reasons that this committee was founded was because staff had been making mistakes, right? There have been a number of instances in the media and the press, we've heard testimony even here earlier this evening, about how students were the victims of insensitive comments made by staff or insensitive actions taken by staff. Maybe not intentionally racist,
Right.
right? But maybe ignorant in the sense that maybe they didn't see how their actions were being interpreted by a student, particularly a student of color. That was kind of my thoughts about what would come out of this committee, right? So dealing with restorative justice, but also talking about how do we train our staff, and then how do we deal with staff when they make these mistakes, right? We can't just fire everybody; we got to retrain them,
Well, I think
and that's
that-
restorative in and of itself.
Absolutely. I think that is a piece of our council's work as well.
Yeah.
I think in providing opportunities for us to learn about diversity, to have open, free conversations about our biases, to take these tests that then determine where you sit and really have hard conversations about them is where we have to go.
Right.
We're doing them with our staffs now. That's what I think we have to do. We've been afraid to do it, or we don't. Nobody wants to unbury things that are there, but until we do that, you don't know what you sit with. We all have them.
Right.
We all have them. We can't be superficial and look out and say silly things like, oh, I don't see color. I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
We can't do that. We have to be real and admit what we see, respect the diversity, grow it, be aware of it, channel it, embrace it, and grow it into what it can be. So I think that is the work of our council. That is where we're, so that we can equip our peers with the right way to do some things that sometimes we all make mistakes. We all do things sometimes that may not be what our first thoughts were. But to have us reflect on those things as a group of leaders in this district is something that we have talked about.
Right. Okay, good. So then I'm going to ask some specific questions then about the presentation and about those conversations that you have been having. Specifically, I wanted to know what ELL training is. It's in the PowerPoint presentation.
English language learner.
Okay.
That is like ESL, how
Sure,
to
okay.
best bridge the gap for students that are sitting in your classroom that don't speak the language, understand the language. How are we bridging the gap for them to make them feel
Right.
accepted? We have lovely Dr. Cantu who could go.
No,
That could really clear up.
Okay, so aside from those specific conversations about increasing ELL training, were there any other conversations about increasing the amount of training that the staff receives aside from the D&I video presentation that they're required at the beginning of the year to watch?
I think it looks different at different campuses. Like I said, some campuses have already embraced the CRC mindset so that any articles that have been shared by campus leaders become part of active conversations. I'm meeting with my department leaders. I know several of my counterparts do the same thing. We talk about how we prejudge kids based on, again, poverty, how they look, what their race
Sure.
is, what their culture. Those hard topics we're addressing now in faculty meetings, in department meetings throughout the day, and just being able to take it one step further instead of kind of just glossing over it.
And you think that it's the best to do that at the campus level and not at the district level?
I think it's happening at district level, if you wanted to add to it, but I think it needs to happen at both.
Okay.
I think with what Dr. Kelly is doing with the courageous conversations about race, it starts at the top, but it's also important to have the conversation at the campus, at any meetings that we are part of. So I'd like to just say that when we talk about culture, and I think you all know this, many people tend to think that culture is about race or ethnicity. It's more than that. Culture is about SES. It's about an individual's address.
Yeah.
It's about a lot of things. So that's why we didn't name this council diversity. It's because people think that diversity is about race. This is about culture. We want to be able to accept people from wherever they are. Not just from wherever they are. So that's really important, is creating this understanding and creating this sense of safe space to be able to openly talk and have the courageous conversation and be okay to say what it is that we may be afraid to say. I've heard the word bias, and you guys know about implicit and explicit bias. We can truly see explicit bias. People openly share their explicit bias. But implicit is what we unconsciously share through our eyes, through the way we react in our physical being. Sometimes we implicitly say things we don't really mean to say, and that's where things go wrong. Implicit bias are things that we learned based on our experiences. And some people have very small experiences. And so that's where ignorance come in. I can share with you my own experiences growing up in the United States in two different cultures. I chalk that up to ignorance. Until people learn better, they'll do better, and they'll know better. Does that make sense? And I think that's part of our council here, is that we are willing to have this courageous conversation with one another and be open about our implicit and explicit biases. And it's not that we don't like each other, or that we don't love each other, or that we don't respect each other. It's the fact that we're willing to have this conversation so that we know better, we can do better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, wasn't the answer to the question that I asked. But no, I completely agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. So there were no specific discussions about certain specific policies that this committee would recommend to the district, other than the framework for restorative justice. Okay.
The culturally responsive component to a framework of operation for a model that would help us with discipline and help us with the imbalance of discipline that we're
Yeah.
We felt like that was a place to invest, but no, we've not talked about.
Well, that's a great place to start. Obviously, if you look at the report from the DOJ Civil Rights Office, right, you see that our black and brown students are disproportionately sent to in-school suspension at a frightening rate. And one of the issues I think that causes that or contributes to that is the fact that our staff, our teachers, are overwhelmingly Caucasian when we know that we have a minority-majority community in our schools. Was there any discussion about whether or not we would look at hiring increased numbers of people of color into our employment?
Well, I think as a district, we're committed to hiring the people that we think best fit.
Right.
People that we're looking for.
So he's implying that.
Handle our children and asking those sensitive questions. How do you handle a diverse setting?
Right.
How do you handle a classroom where
Now we're political again. Really? Yeah. Well, and that's a common.
yes, we are.
Yeah.
How many of y'all are principals on this committee? Raise your hand. Y'all
Hang
do.
on, Mr. Bakken, let's give the floor back to Mr.
Okay, no, I'm
Floyd. No, let's give the floor back to Mr. Floyd. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I don't. I'll let Mr. Bakken finish that whenever I'm done with this. 70% of our staff, and I'm proud to see the diversity here. I don't know if that was what the intention of that was, but you know, I often hear people say, "Well, we want to hire the best," but that doesn't mean that 70%, you know, more than double the percentage of our students. There are incredible numbers of highly qualified people of color, and I think that if we hire, I mean, there's statistics out there that prove that when a student sees themselves in all different ways, income level, skin color, religion, when they see themselves in their teacher, their grades go up, the community culture grows as well. And I fear that if we say, you know, well, we're just going to hire the best, that might just be a cop-out for keeping the status quo, and I don't think that's what we want to do.
And that is true to a great degree. But what's really true is the educator that's in the classroom that accepts all the students, embraces all those students, loves them, and respects each and every one of them. That is more important, because me being Hispanic as a teacher, I don't necessarily have to gain the respect of only the Spanish-speaking students.
Of course not. Right.
And I don't always have to be there only for them. I'm there for every child, and I'm responsible for every child. So I have to open up and be passionate about learning each and every one of them, where they come from, what they represent. And I have to be passionate about
All
them.
of it, right. Yeah,
being
and please don't misinterpret my
no,
words
I'm not,
as
I'm not
me
saying you
that.
do.
Yeah.
What we're saying is, yes, that is correct. And there's lots of literature that say that. But my experience says that the best teacher is the teacher that has the passion to love each and every child, no matter who that child is. To me, that is what I've experienced as a principal for over, 23 years as a principal. So the race, color, culture did not matter when he or she sat in front of that classroom. It was the passion that teacher had to bring the best out of every child.
Yeah, and yeah, go ahead, please.
And hiring is hard.
Of course,
It is a
right.
difficult process, and sometimes you feel like you're going the right way, and you realize, like 9 weeks when I hired this lovely person that quit, it was the wrong way. And I think intuitively, as campus leaders, we try to pinpoint those qualities that we're looking for, and sometimes it crosses racial boundaries. I mean, we'd be insensitive to say, oh, I'm just going to hire a whole bunch of African American people because I have a whole bunch of African American people in my school. I don't think that's how we want to operate as a leader.
Of course not, no.
But I think we are mindful of that connection. I believe every one of us, we do understand that kids do need to see themselves in roles other than what people kind of write them I know what, meaning, if they're the leaders in the school, that projects me to an opportunity where I feel like I can do that. You see what I mean? So if a person sees a person of his culture or race
Right.
as a leader, then that gives them the opportunity to do the same thing. Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
it is.
You project that.
You know, I think Ms. Farano, you just said that, you know, that yes, of course, the quality of the teacher is of highest consideration when it comes to hiring. And I'm not trying to dispute that. But I do believe that race does matter. Like we said earlier, you know, you can't say that you don't see color. And my grandmother says that I have to correct her all the time because it comes from a different generation. I mean, it is a generational change. This is the most.
Right thing to say. It's most people feel that that is the safe thing to say. When I look out, I don't see color.
Yeah.
But in
reality, you should.
Right. And you should respect it. Right.
There are different colors sitting in front of you. We should see it.
Another specific question, and I know this is getting into the weeds, but was there any talk about an equity audit? I know that in the trainings about restorative justice, they often talk about equity audits where they look through the schools and make sure, no, there's no discussion about that.
It's restorative practices, not justice.
Restorative practices, it's formally called restorative justice, colloquially known as restorative justice. We can call it whatever we want. Restorative practices, PBIS, known famously for restorative justice, but restorative practices is fine. I love the mission to be proactive, to move ahead, and to a big part of that, I believe, is reaching out to the community and letting them know that we see the problems, that we're not going to ignore them, we're not going to pretend they don't exist, and that by recognizing them, that means that we're taking accountability, we're going to do something about it. So I would like to see restorative justice implemented. I would also like to see a little bit more specifics about training of our teachers, especially restorative training for teachers who may have made a mistake to get back in and understand where they went wrong and really process it. And I believe that the committee would agree with that largely. Just keep doing your work. You've been, Dr. Miles, you've done a great job. I'm really confident in you and your ability and the committee's ability to lead this district forward. I appreciate your time. Yeah.
Mr. Berry?
It's me, finally. Well, I had 7 questions. Now I think I only have 4 left, but I think I can condense them into a few statements. And I think you've done a great job, and you know, I'm glad you guys have taken on the challenge because it's not an easy challenge. Changing the culture of a small organization, much less an organization of, you know, I don't know, 27,000 individuals, including teachers and students and whatnot, is a huge issue. You know, and it all goes back to messaging for me, and it all goes back to how do we message, and this is my question, is one of them, is how do we maintain or make certain that the messaging for students from year to year, classroom to classroom, stays consistent, and who manages that messaging?
Well, I think the start is in building these community circles. That's where we're grounding the whole work.
Mhm.
Because if we are practicing how to take values that are important, we can talk values all day. And if you put in a classroom of 25 kids, I guarantee you would see some of those same values show up in all of them. Honesty, love, affection, respect. They're gonna come up.
Mhm.
I think you ground it in values and then use that as an anchor and have that continue. But because we've not started it and there's no model, all we have is what's kind of happening at the elementary school: be safe, be responsible, be respectful. We don't really talk values. We don't talk about them. I think that is a place, that is an anchor to continue to keep grounding ourselves so that it is a consistent thing from year to year. And the more confident teachers are in building those circles, and we, literally, there's a policy, we have to enforce it. If we really believe it's the way to go, then we have to do it. Us as campus administrators, we're already in on it. We know we have to make time, whether it be advisory, whether it be homeroom, whatever that looks like from week to week. It's got to be a consistent practice that continues. And then from that, those circles can change into anything. What do you love about Christmas? What is the most important thing to you about finishing 7th grade? I mean, the values then turn into many topics and then build on something that you've grounded them in. So I think that's how the consistency consistency can be created and built, but I think it takes a team or a council to kind of create that framework that I think is still embedded in what we want to see as part of our district leadership team framework.
And there's another, I read a lot of books. We're in the customer service business, right? And from a small organization of 7 people that I have, and I've worked within organizations that were just as large as 1,500 employees, right? Culture is a big deal, and you don't realize how intrusive it becomes into an organization. And let's take all the color and ethnicity and all that stuff out of it. It's all about people and emotions. And if you can get to the bottom of what drives those individuals, and I think that's what you're talking about with these circles and whatnot, I think it's a great thing. And I just recently read this book about the Ritz-Carlton. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been there. I just heard about it, never been. But I read this book about the Ritz-Carlton. It's called The Gold Standard. And every day from the CEO all the way down to the lowest level paid employee, they have a certain time that they all get together. And if you were to look at that organization comes to a dead stop, and they have these meetings, and they're much like these circles. And these circles have one goal for the day, and it's the same goal for the day for all locations all over the world. And they all the way down from, up from the CEO down to the lowest paid employee. And I found that very impressive because as a, small group that I have, I don't manage to find the time to do that. So I know it's a challenge. It's going to be sometimes you might think it's hard, but I think messaging there again becomes the key, right?
Sure.
So messaging between the students, the teachers, and the parents. So bringing the parents in, I think, is very critical because the parents can actually learn from this as well. So if they can build it into their day-to-day, and I'm not a parent, so it's easy for me to say, but if they can build it into their lifestyle, and build upon that in the household, I think we've come a long way. But how do you plan to reach the parents? We only had 5 people, I think, on the whole committee, 5 parents. I know you guys are all parents,
I think it can start in PTA meetings. I've already kind of visited that with my team. And I have one of the most responsive PTA councils this year, very diverse group. And I think starting there, because they talk, and they are out there, and they're in the middle of it, and they're in the trenches, and they're at our dances, and they're raising money. And I think we can take some of these circles to our PTA meetings, which are relatively small and doable. Because you really need a close group. 20 is sufficient. You have 50, it's difficult. It has to be in manageable circles so you can physically hear and put your eyes and feel the emotions, because that's how it does grow. You said it, it's the emotions. But I think we cannot afford not to make time to do it. We have to make time to do it, and then make sure it's carried out. If we do that, I think we will find the fruit in it, but we have to aggressively do it.
Over time, it sounds like we're already going down this path. We have people that are trainers, trainers of trainers, I guess you would say, let's say next year at this time, how would you define this program as being a success?
Well, thankfully, CNI has been able to reach out and at least start us on this next level, because they have been able to recruit Dr. Lang to come in and train us. Then, I believe as a council, we then become the trainer of trainers for our district and start training as many people as possible. I still think it's going to look different at campuses because of where we are. Some of us are just a little further along, but you have some model pilot kind of campuses that then we can take this practice and grow it. And like Mrs. Serrano said, we have to start and then have that radiate out. I'm sure I'm there. I know she's there. I know these council members, we're pushing it and we're ready to go. I think to have a model then become a model that radiates out to the other campus principals would then be a practice that we'd like to see carried out. Yeah.
One thing to also remember, Mr. Berry and other board members, is it's not something that we can start off whole campus. It doesn't work whole campus. You have to start off in a smaller group. And it's back to making sure we build the relationship. That's really what it comes down to. Someone made the statement earlier that we got away from that part of teaching, and we have, because we've had so many other things we've had to check off that we've had to get accomplished in the day. It's going back to what we remember when we were in school. It's building those relationships. Mr. Murphy made a comment, and I think so you said too, well, you know, we're doing all this in school, but how do you change what's at home? Two things. We all know, those of us that are parents, when our kids come home and talk about stuff, we want to investigate and find out more about it. So that's how we get our parents involved, okay? Our kids are also our PR people as well. Another way, Mr. Murphy made a comment about, you know, if we can do all this at school, but what about what's going on at home? Well, speaking from my own experiences, you know, sometimes your home is not always what you want it to be. But it's someone at the campus that built that relationship with you that made you understand that there are things that are better than what's going on at your home. And that's how we as educators can make a change for our students. We can't always control what's going on at their home, but we can make it better for them at the school. And that's what helped me progress to being a better person. And I think that's a lot of our kids, remembering that. Sometimes the educator is the only one that can reach students and help them change. And instilling this, and like you said, Mr. Floyd, you know, a majority of our teaching population, not only here in Pearland, but in our nation, are predominantly white, middle-class females. Okay, a lot of that we can't change overnight. So how do we empower these teachers to work with these students and relate to these students? Another suggestion I have for the board, Ms. Carbone made the comment that how could we help and assist? The first thing I would love you all to do, and nothing you have to share, is take the opportunity to take the implicit bias test that's free online to make you look at it for yourself and see that everybody has implicit biases. But how do you recognize that and own up to that and make a change? For me to take the test myself, it was very eye-opening to see some things, and I'm not going to share them with you, but okay, just to know that if you get that opportunity, Harvard University has it online. It's just not about race or gender. It's about sexual orientation, all different things that you're able to do. If you have that opportunity, take the time to see that, because again, I go back to, in being an educator, sometimes our job is more than just educating our students to be successful. It's building those relationships so they continue to grow and do things like that. So that's what we have to do. We're not going to be able to change our teaching population overnight, but it's very important that we think about it, and we are conscious of that when we go into our interviews. We know that. I mean, our wonderful HR staff has worked with us to create some questions to support us in interview questions with being culturally responsive when we're sharing with and interviewing at that time. So again, it goes back to how can we change and be proactive with these behaviors so we don't have to. You asked about data. Looking at that data, how do we prove success next year? It's going back and looking at the data. See, you know, compared to last year, do we have as many office referrals from our teachers? Are they being as, you know, responsive in their classrooms to where it's not always just writing a referral for something, but are they trying to do more things with that? So it's all these checks and balances that's important. I'm gonna be honest, in a perfect world, right now, we're gonna have to be the gatekeepers of that, the principals and administrative staff. If when this continues and grows, we may have to. Looking at bigger districts, there are positions that are just for that in certain districts. And later on, as we continue to progress, that may be an option for us, because it's as this continues to grow, we are gonna have to have somebody other than ourselves to do the checks and balances for that.
And last thing, I'll just leave you guys with this. So last year, we came up with the idea of a student advisory committee, and we just recently had and I think my notes are in the board packet, but it's somewhat troublesome to see some of these kids that, and we just had junior highs and high schools. Well, I think we had 12 or 15 kids. I didn't really count them, but it's definitely a growing concern of mine to make sure that our campus culture is on track, and that we enable the students within each campus to, whether it be foster a newcomer to the school or big brother, big sister type thing. So I would really like to see something like that happen. And I know those things don't happen overnight, but I'd really like to see that happen, just so that we get those kids transferring from one campus to another, whether their friends are going there, their neighbors are going there or not. They have someone to show them around, take them under their wing, that kind of thing, connect, right? And fold into the culture of that campus, because every classroom, every campus, it's all different. So you guys have a lot of work ahead of you, and I applaud you for taking on the task. Yeah.
And on that note, I would recommend a program that actually I went through here in Pearland. It's called Safe School Ambassadors.
We had it.
We did have it, and it was an intensive 2-day
Right.
circle-like training for students, right? And I think that's such an important thing that students are getting this training as well, and they would under this framework. So I don't know. I'm not saying that we need to go out and third party to them, but I would just take a glance at their framework. Yeah, it's really, really great.
Okay. I bet y'all thought we were done. Anyway, a few things. I wanted to address some things that I've heard from families and students over the time I've been on the board, and kind of want to understand how the council, like, where are you addressing some of these issues down in your plan? Because I know there's a lot that's going on that I probably can't see from the 30,000-foot level. We talked about implicit bias, and there's always been a question about equality and consequences, right? And that students of maybe one ethnicity feel like they are punished more heavily, or punished for things that other students wouldn't be punished for. I kind of chalk that up to implicit bias, and I'm thinking there's another term I read an article about. I think it's cultural deficit thinking, but I may have that wrong. Am I right about that? Okay, and that's pretty much the thought that if you see somebody who's of a different ethnicity or what have you, you initially think that they are somehow worse, right? And so just the example would be, if you see kids, African-American kids being disciplined more than others, and if you think that, well, those kids just must be worse people, they probably don't have dads at home, they probably don't. That's cultural deficit thinking, right? So is attacking that or addressing that in our training, is that
I think it is
where we are? Okay.
100%. Those are some of these the literature that we have shared. All of those pieces we have those these are the conversations we're having with our teams, with our faculties, because that is the realness. And until we put it in front of you and you see it, you're going to keep doing it.
Right.
So yes, we do have to acclimate them to, if this is your bias, just because you have a classroom and there are 14 Hispanic males in there, you don't automatically assume that they're going to be the only group that's making all the poor choices.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
yes, we found ourselves there, and we are trying to make sure that we're making our staff aware of those things, so that is not the way we operate. It is, again, the mindset that we have to change.
Okay. And I've heard some stories about comments in between staff members, and I wonder how we're going to handle, just over the years, just racial stuff, right? And I wonder how we're handling that kind of that horizontal relationship between our staff members. I see where we are with working with the vertical relationship between the students and the teachers, and even the students between the students themselves. But how are we handling the interactions between staff members?
Well, I think there's work to do, because at every campus level you have cliques of people that operate, especially on like a junior high and a high school campus. You have little families and pods that operate, and I can see that becoming an issue if it's not addressed. And I am hopeful that all of our campus leaders are strong enough to engage in conversations when they feel those things are happening. I know I can speak for people behind me. That's not something that's tolerated at our level. I mean, if I hear it, I see it, I feel it, I'm on it. And whoever else, y'all all know me. And I mean, I'm not sure what you think is appropriate.
Yeah.
But I'm not afraid to let you know it's not.
Okay.
And I think it's that boldness without overstepping the boundary, feeling like, oh, they're gonna turn me in, they're gonna rat me out or whatever. I personally don't care. We have to have that no-nonsense mentality for tolerance. And I think as we grow people and empower them and they know who they are inside and say, oh yeah, I may be a little tainted on this, but it means I have to look at it differently. So I think the more we empower people, they're better able to address those things when they come up or when they surface.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If someone feels like they've been harmed or offended, it's just not by another person. So that circle can work both ways, but it's also being comfortable with addressing it head on and letting those people. The biggest thing is empowering people to speak up, to say that they've been hurt or harmed, and then allowing them to be heard, and then hearing from the other person that was the one that did the harm and making them share that. And I think that is the power in it. And then actually going up, because people, as I think Mr. Floyd said, we can't just go around firing people. I think was, when we, you have to give people the opportunity to grow. But if they continue to make those mistakes, then we have to do other things. But you have to also know that we're here to build and grow people. And that's how you do it, by doing that.
Thank you very much. Are any community events, should we expect to see any, I don't know, anything with any community events? Or
We need a community event. Oh, Dr. Franco has one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I see. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, so we are working on making sure that our community feels empowered, welcome, loved, cared for, respected, and I'm very happy that that happens at all the campuses, that we have programs, a lot of them in there. One of the things that when I came as a minority to the district, I was told, are you sure, Pearland? And I said, yes, they have all these programs for the kids, and we have to really work on that perception. Is the district being perceived as who we are and what we valued? One of the things that we did, we're doing a lot of community events. We are very excited about our second multicultural festival that's coming up in February, making sure that parents feel like they're here to share with, who they are and feel valued and empowered. Making sure we're working right now with a group of teachers to have the teachers lead sessions for parents, because what's more powerful for them to hear that than it is for them to really hear from the teachers. How do I help my child become a better reader? What if I don't read myself? What if I'm an illiterate parent? It's really empowering those parents. And we do a lot of advertising the events, working with the teachers, and we have great turnouts. We had the Dual Language by Literacy night on the first night that the Astros played at the World Series, and we still had almost 500 people in the building. So we were very happy to see that, because we thought, forget it, all the hard work and nobody's gonna show up, right? But they did, and the community came through. So it's building those partnerships with the community, making sure that they feel valued, that they feel accepted, and that we are here for them, and that the kids, when they go to the to the different schools, that they feel that they belong there. It's really hard if you're coming as a newcomer and you're surrounded by a lot of strangers that don't speak the language, that don't know who you are. So those are some of the things. And the training that we actually did with Dr. Izquierdo, I had already scheduled that training for the district way before any of the events happened, because we do want to make sure that teachers are feeling like they know how to work with kids that may not look like them. And it's okay if they don't look like you. Like Ms. Serrano said, if I'm a Hispanic teacher, it doesn't matter. I want to make sure that I'm addressing all the kids, regardless of who they are. So we're working every day.
Okay, I know it's getting late, so I'm gonna just go with one more thing. when Mr. Floyd talked about hiring. You know, I will grant you that we want the very best person in every position, and but I'll also say that we talk about implicit bias in other places. Let's check ourselves to make sure that we're not suffering from our implicit bias in our hiring practices. Mr. Moody, I'm not saying that there's, I'm just saying that if we're talking about this, and let's just check it all, right? And let's just check ourselves and see, where we really are, right? And are we actually getting the best person and everything? Because as an owner of historically underutilized business, as soon as you start saying we want to include hub businesses, right? The counter argument is, well, we want the best, right? And so the implication is that if you start saying that we're going to bring in historically underutilized businesses, then those businesses are somehow less qualified, going to give you a worse product, so forth and so on, right? And I deal with that all the time, right? So I just want to make sure that when we say we're bringing in the best person for every job, then we definitely want to make sure that we're doing that. And I'll share with you what I've heard, that, of course, everybody who puts in the application thinks they should get an interview, right? And so, that doesn't always work out, right? But I've heard from lots of African-American individuals, and I've done this for however many years, whatever, I can't even get an interview, right? But then you have individuals who work here and who say, well, we do feel underrepresented in staff and so forth and so on. But when there's trouble with an African-American kid, they always know where to find the African-American teachers to try to handle that, right? So I think that our embracing, we really have to embrace that thing that we're going to get the very best person, and we have to make sure that we're not being hindered by any biases in our hiring processes.
Sure,
okay. So is there anything else that anyone else wanted to add?
This is a process going to take many, many years. You all know that. But I was thinking about how this effect would just start compounding on itself, right? Once you start training kids in junior high, those kids are going to move up to the high school. And so it's collectively just going to start growing and becoming easier and really becoming ingrained. So,
You gotta start,
yeah,
though.
definitely years and years of work ahead of you.
Yes.
But thank you.
If we survive it.
Sorry, one more time?
So years and years.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right, anything else? Yeah, thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Item 4 on the regular agenda, consider to approve additional personnel.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, you may remember that last month I briefed you on our plans for full-day pre-K. This is not a option for school districts, it's a requirement. The only option is how fast you can get it together. In our particular case, we believe we can implement this by fall of 2020. In order to do so, it is a very massive undertaking. Although you may say, well, this is only one grade of 14 that we handle, it is a big job to get to full-day pre-K. We believe that we need someone at the director level to handle this. You can imagine that this is a combination of working with the business office, the transportation office, the curriculum and instruction office, and about 5 others just to pull off. For example, one of the big challenges that we'll face is staffing. And that's not just an HR question, that's going to be how do we get a better handle on how many students out there might actually show up, because that's going to make a giant difference in how we staff. We think it's going to be somewhere between 300 and 500 students, so we need a better handle on it than that.
What's the ratio you'd have to do for?
Well, the ratio that they tell us to move towards is 11-to-1, and that includes a combination of it can include a combination of a teacher and an aide. We're not going to get there in this first year, but I think David, correct me on this, but I think initially we're looking at 12 teachers and 10 aides. Does that sound right for this first year?
Right now, if we expanded what we currently had and added in new positions, I think we would need a combination of roughly 14 additional positions at this point. That's assuming that only the kids that we currently have in pre-K were simply attending all day.
Yeah, but we're also looking at the possibility that because you get daycare, not daycare, but you get a much longer time as a mother or a dad to have your kid at school, you may choose us rather than choose another option that costs money. And so, and we would like for that to happen because the kids that are eligible for pre-K are economically disadvantaged and English language learners. So it is of great advantage to those students to get caught up before kindergarten starts. So anyway, but I think I've gotten a little off topic. My main thing is this is a very important next step for our school district and requires that we have some leadership to get there.
So,
I'd like to make a
so
motion.
Dr. Kelly, real quick, that's 300 to 500 additional students than what we have now?
No, sir. We have 300 right now, about 285 actually this particular year, but we've averaged about 300. So we're counting that those 300 for sure, but we're saying that we may attract as much as an additional 200 because of this full day availability.
I got you. Cool.
I'd like to make a motion. The Board of Trustees approve the recommendation of additional personnel for the 2019-2020 school year and subsequent years.
Second.
Motion Bakken, second Floyd. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
I would just quickly like to commend the administration for moving so swift on this and not allowing us to push out to go to
Yeah,
private.
thank you, Michael. It's going to take some work, whoever that director is, believe me, but we'll get there.
All right, next item, number 5, to consider to approve teacher incentive payment for the 2018-2019 STAR CTE and Advanced Academics.
I want to just remind all the board, I think you already know this, of our past decisions on this. We were facing what we thought would be a very difficult year this year. And so in the spring, I'm going to say it was in May or June, we came together and we decided, the board did, on a cap for each of the 3 types of pay. And we established a cap for STAR at 300,000, AP, SAT at 150,000, and CTE at 50,000, remembering Jeff's request and the board's agreement that we ought to be paying more attention to the CTE put. So, if you could look at page 71 in your packet, or if we can show that on the board, what we've done there is, well, let me just cut straight to the recommendations and then we'll back up if we need to. First of all, under the system we've had in place for a number of years, the teachers would have earned $251,800 for AP rather than the $150,000 cap that we placed in the budget. So right off the bat, I would recommend that we pay the full amount. It's what people would expect us to do if we have the funds for doing it. The same thing is with regard to CTE. There's only a difference of $5,000 between the cap we established of $50,000 and the amount that we would pay under full, which is $55,000. So to me, those are the 2 easiest parts of your decision.
Hard one.
The hard one is the STAR. What we said was a cap of $300,000. If you look at that chart on page 71 there, a cap of 300,000 means that each eligible teacher would get 852, and then we would have to add another 30,000 to that 300,000 in order to pay $219 to the non-teacher of records. So I know the board has continually expressed over the last few months that you wish you could do more for the employees, but your hands were tied because of contractual obligations. This sits outside the contract. It is not part of the contract, and the board has freedom to do or not to do what it would like in this area. So, Charles, if you're asking me for recommendation, for sure I would say let's fully fund the AP and the CTE, and at your pleasure of how much you think that we ought to do or not with the STAR pay.
Okay, thank you. We'll open it up. Let's we'll keep going with the just passing the floor around so everybody gets their questions asked. Mrs. Decker, you started, so go ahead.
I just want to know, what was the difference again, Dr. Kelly, between what we it was another $105,000 for the STAR incentive pay?
Well,
Is that what we're looking at?
The weird thing about the STAR incentive pay is that unlike the other two, it never had a, this is the amount we're going to pay. We went at it backwards in this particular case and said, let's set a cap at 300,000. And so now that we've done the calculations, that's what comes up to, in this case, $852 per teacher. So you see what I'm saying? We had a new STAR system, unlike the old one that was based on the brand new accountability system. Did you, for example, at your campus in that particular area, did you move from a B to an A, or did you maintain your A?
So Dr. Kelly, you're saying that 300,000, you said 822?
852.
852.27.
Then if we went to,
Historically,
what's the difference, what's the difference in the average?
I'm not sure what you mean there, Lance.
Can I
So
just
405 is what the total is, right?
We have a cap right now.
No,
But I'm
okay.
saying- But I'm just saying,
300,000.
Yeah.
500,000.
what's the STAR incentive pay right here? What am I looking at? Just
No.
go-
Yeah,
cap
the,
is-
the
that's
awkward
on
position that
STAR,
we've put
yeah.
you in is that
This goes up to.
we're showing you how much you would be able to do for the individual teacher at the different amounts there in the left-hand column.
So if we fully
offer
fund
a different
AP,
suggestion altogether, and I don't know how popular this would be, but I know that we had discussion at length. It's one of the more memorable conversations that I've had since we've been on the board about ensuring that I know that we start testing at third grade, but it's the foundational work built from kindergarten up that meets the requirement for that third grader. I'd like to suggest that instead of just incentivizing the teachers of record, that we move the bar up to the 500,000 and give an incentive across the board
No, I don't think so, Crystal.
for that campus.
We would not
grade
have
that-
really the legal basis for doing that, because that's sort of changing the rules after the year is finished and saying, well, let's include teachers that weren't in the original accountability system. We can move towards that in a future year. In fact, Mr. Moody has been working on, the state now is going to allocate money to school districts that basically offer that opportunity to every single person. But it has to go through about 2 years worth of work before you can get to that point, to where a PE teacher could be equally considered for additional revenue. But I don't think we're in a good legal or place to say, let's now take
about
some extra money.
saying that we are incentivizing this school, like any teacher in the school, whether they did poor, not as well as other teachers, in that we're incentivizing them. So I guess my thought is, if we're incentivizing campus-wide, that it was about the campus improving, not about individual teachers.
Well, I think that the philosophy that's emerged over the years, and really from the board, has been try to get down and target the teachers who are actually making the difference on the thing that you are measuring. And that's where this system has
where the
evolved.
mid-year bonus, the mid-year incentive pay comes in, where we cover everybody.
Right. And
That's how we get around what.
Yes, if our financial situation had been better, then we would have recommended in May or June, let's put that provision in for what Crystal would like to see, which is more of
I-
everybody approach.
I can tell you that I would never, I mean, I didn't think about it like this. I thought, like, when we talked about this before, if a campus, it would be given to the campus, and like we did in the past, when I was teaching, the campus was allocated how much the teacher on record and non-teacher of record, the dyslexia teacher, everybody across the board got some sort of piece of the pie, because it takes a whole village, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I mean, I don't know where this came from, but I've said that from day one. I've never said I want to incentivize just the teachers, STAR teachers of record, because my wife is a dyslexia specialist.
Yeah.
And she never got any of it, and then not here, but in other districts too, and then they finally looped that in with the other test, right?
Right.
And so she had a part in them kids passing that test. So
Well, but all I can say, Lance, is this system has been in place for a number of years, just like
Several
this,
years.
and
About it every year.
it's primarily because the board,
but I've also said
pushed
that I would
us
like
in
to work towards
towards
the campus everybody being of
Yeah.
record.
Now,
somebody being
I have developed systems like that before I came to Pearland, where everybody got, if the campus achieved a certain level, every professional got so much and every paraprofessional, but that's
John,
not
did
the
you want to
way.
say something? 'Cause you were saying something while I was talking. Did you want to say something?
No, I said this is what's been done every year prior, and this is what was discussed when we approved the cap.
But I also said that I would like to work towards not just incentivizing just the teachers of record. I've said that many times.
But I guess what I hear Dr. Kelly saying, and I apologize for putting a wrench in this, because
No.
I was thinking that if it's a campus thing, that maybe we could reconsider that option. But I think what I hear you saying is this is what we already approved last year. So we can,
if we wanna
if
change
we
the game-
want to move towards that for the upcoming year, that can definitely be
Yes.
of consideration.
Yes.
But because we approved it this way last year,
Yeah.
that's what we're now following through on
Yes.
based on that.
So when you bring it to us to approve the budget, you can
Next
bring
year.
it to us with a
different
a
plan.
different plan.
And Dr. Nixon was one of our original architects back there on the plan, and it was based a lot on board input about how we wanted to do it. But if the board's inclination is to move towards more of that, reward everybody for the accomplishments as a whole, that can be done. It's not so difficult. But I also want to point out that the state's direction right now, the state is basically saying, pick out your best teachers through a long, involved process and get their money way up through that process. And we, the state, will pay for that extra amount. We will give it to you if you develop the right system. So that's the long-term picture that we would do. But it could be in addition to what Crystal suggests, which is more of a, man, your campus did a great job, and we're a family, and we're going to award everybody on that campus X amount from, and I've done this before, from the custodian,
Right.
the food service worker, up to the principal.
I mean, it just is alignment with everything else that we're talking about tonight, right? If we're gonna build a community and culture at which we are respecting each other, treating each other with kindness, aware of each other's strengths and weaknesses, and bolstering the environment that we're moving towards, then incentivizing some who have the opportunity to teach,
The right subject. you know.
yes, is not of
So-
advantage
What's
to
right group
what
of
we're
students.
trying
But
to
it
do.
doesn't.
Okay,
you
may
know,
I interrupt the discussion? So I'm hearing that, yes, we want to move towards incentivizing everybody at a campus. But the decision, and that's great, we'll take that forward to, team building and other future sessions that we'll talk about board goals. But tonight, we need to just consider what our amounts are that we're going to pay. And administration has given us the recommendation of paying the full amount that would have been earned without a cap for CTE. That would be $55,200. Paying the full amount for AP that would have been earned, which is $251,000. Right, and then we're at a level right now where I'm just plugging this in of $300,000 for the STAR. That's the teacher of record. So if you add those numbers together, we're at $607,000.
And we originally budgeted a total of 500,000.
Yes.
500,000. We said 500,000 all in, but that was because we brought that back because we were looking at a multi-million-dollar surplus. And Dr. Kelly, would you remind me of what our multi-million-dollar deficit? What was the surplus from? You sent that. I asked that question. So the budget, the level we're looking at
Like
right
$4
now.
million.
On surplus. Okay, so that's what we're working with. All right, so we're at, I guess, at the base level, we're at 607,000. Is there any argument against either the AP or the CTE paying those at the full amount?
I think we ought to pay CTE more.
Well,
And
we
the-
can't.
and
we-
the reason is-
okay. At this point, we can't pay them more. We got to pay them what they earned. That we got to talk about what they earned.
Change it.
Yeah.
That's where I was
So
going.
if we're talking about, we want to change the weights, then we can do that at a future time. But for right now, for next year. But for right now, they've earned a certain amount based upon the criteria that were in place. So, do you want to pay?
So then why
all
are we
of that?
changing it now? We've already voted on it. We've already voted on it a
Vote
while
for the
back
money.
to change the budget,
Because
right?
we have
Yes.
more money that we can actually
Voted on
put
the
into it if we
criteria.
want.
Okay, wait, no. We set in a cap based upon where we thought we were going to be budget wise, right? So we said no matter what the actual earnings are, we're only going to pay $500,000 in incentives for last year. Okay, last school year.
Still go with that.
Okay, so Great, so good. That's
One
that's
other
where you
point,
are, but yeah.
Mr. President, on page 72, at the very bottom, it shows the amount we spent over the last 3 years.
Right.
And so it's, it ranged from 662,000 to 696,000. So that might fit into your thinking. You're basically, if you're following Charles' lead, if we pay the full amount for AP and CTE, we're at about, I'll round it off, 300,000. So, do you want to,
So I've been doing the number, a little quick math here. If we fully paid AP, fully paid CTE, it brings us to a little bit above $300,000. And then if we go back to a historical look at what STAR has been, around 450,000, you put that up to 750, we could easily afford it, and people would be very happy. And I don't know if that's what you would recommend. I don't know if what you would
bingo.
recommend.
That
Okay.
sounds great to me.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve merit pay for full AP merit pay, full CTE merit pay, and $450,000 merit pay for STAR. I
Do
don't know
we
if
need
that's in
to
the
talk
correct
about
form.
non-teachers of record as well?
I'm assuming that you are including that, but that is an additional 45,000. So I'm not sure if you meant to include that or.
We can include it, and it's fine.
Okay, so we include it in the number, or should we add 50,000 to what you?
Right.
Add 50,000 to what you were saying.
You're going up to 450 on the and
So
450 on STAR.
15,000.
and 45,000.
4,500, 45,000 max pay, AP max pay.
Yeah.
495 for STAR.
Second
Right.
that.
Okay.
But I'd also like to add a point of discussion at this point that I don't think we're in the sweet spot yet of our incentive package plan. I'm still very uncomfortable with the spread of 14,000 max at Dawson. I know they've earned it, but the discrepancy in those bonuses for AP testing is still something I feel like we need to really dig into and try to understand some more. I don't know what that looks like or how to get there, but I feel like there's still some areas that we can tweak to make this something that's of comfort to everyone.
In other words, between schools, are you talking about?
Not necessarily between schools, but last year we got the individual payout of every teacher. I didn't see it in this package, but it doesn't make merit for what the decision is we're making tonight. But those kinds of data points, and then comparing that to the outputs that we're getting as far as what we're taking, and are we improving, are we plateauing, has all those kinds of questions, I think, are different and then I hear career tech needs some beefing up too, and I don't know what that looks like.
Well, I'll just make one summary comment there, because
Please.
the AP is one of the most successful things I have ever seen, and I inherited it. The only thing we did since I've been here is we've tweaked it. So I don't want to take anything away from that. I think it does produce the results we're seeing. But I also totally agree with you, and I think Jeff especially has made this point in the past, that we can do more for CTE. It's just harder to measure because certifications.
Well, certification, but the thing about CTE is now it's part of our grading system.
Yes, that's
whereas
true.
before it wasn't. And so AP and STAR were always part of our grading system, and we had to increase AP test takers and AP successes in order to accumulate more
Right.
financial success.
Right.
So that's why this makes sense, right? This whole scheme. But when we kind of folded in CTE into this whole spectrum, I think there's a huge disparity there.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of increasing the actual pay for, and the reason is purely financial. We got a one-off $6.2 million that we didn't expect. We now have a budget of a surplus of 4. We can certainly afford it. Don't get me wrong. But how, at some point, are we going to ever pay back some of the money that we've taken out historically into our reserve fund? I mean, obviously, we're going to have the money this year, and it's probably fine. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to have to vote against it on principle. But the idea is at some point, we have to have and understand what our future budgetary goals are. If we know that we have this money looming somewhere out in the future, we need to know about it. We don't even get that. We don't get, hey, we might get this FEMA funding that we were thinking we're going to get not till 2 years from now. And then, oh, by the way, the one where the state paid 2 years in a row and not one, which means that next year we're not going to get that funding, right? So, because we got both years this year. So next year we're not going to get that 1.2 million or whatever it is. So I'm just pulling that number out of the air. But
I think,
that's
Jeff,
my whole point,
realistically,
right?
the uncertainty is going to remain. Now, this is a particularly uncertain year because even now, all the districts are still trying to figure out HB3 and what that really means in terms of what they're going to get. There will be less uncertainty next year, but some of it is, I think, we all did the best we could to estimate what House Bill 3 meant in June when you guys
no, that was a
passed the budget.
short wick on that.
Whenever
I
you
get it.
communicate with staff regarding this merit pay, can you be sure to emphasize that we are uncertain about this? This was we're not guaranteed because I don't want people to get their expectations up. This is going to be a
Right.
year after
Yes.
year thing.
Yes.
So.
Well, it sure sounds like I'm going to be doing some redesign work on some of this.
Yeah.
And then also, Mr. Moody and his office has got some long-term work we need to do.
The last comment I'm going to make on this is I don't want the changes that we make in the future to make this less of a benefit for our teachers. And the reason is because we struggle now as it is with our benefit structure for our teachers. We have to be able to attract and maintain or retain good, solid teachers. And, these are the ones that are really, putting in the extra hours and so on and so forth. Not that the others aren't, but it shows in our test results. So something to be proud of. So, and I'm sure that this has a lot to do with it. So.
And
All right.
The only other comment I want to ask about is about how to communicate this, to make it the biggest splash possible. If there's an opportunity to build a success that's a community story or something else, coming out of House Bill 3, thinking that, I don't know how to make that happen.
Well, I think the number one message that I think people will appreciate is that the board is fully funding the two elements and then has gone far beyond what they originally projected for the third, which is STAR.
But I guess I'm not just talking about to the teachers who are receiving the incentives alone, trying to find a way to communicate that externally in a way that says, look at what we're doing.
Okay.
I get it.
Okay.
All right.
That's not
I don't know.
No,
I'll
I
think
get
about
it.
that.
Toot our own horn. I got
Yeah,
Yeah.
toot it loud.
We hadn't voted on it yet, Dr.
Hey,
All
the
right.
tuba.
Okay.
Yeah, we are going to
Got one
vote.
nay, so.
Is there any further discussion? There is a motion on the floor by Floyd, a second by Carbone. Hearing no other.
The last comment is.
Yes, sir.
I always have to put in my last 2 cents.
Yes, sir.
But $2.8 million is a 2% raise for our teachers next year. Just saying that.
I think that sounds
Okay.
about right.
Noted. Thank you. Let's vote.
1.4
All right.
million per year.
All right. The motion is on the floor.
Rude.
Let's vote. All in favor? All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-1. Trustee Barry dissenting. The administrative quarterly investment report is in your board packet for your information.
And Mr.
Dr.
President?
Kelly, are we done with the agenda?
Yes, sir, we are.
President?
Yes, ma'am.
We didn't get a chance to review the
Board
board
member-
committee updates. So I'd
right,
just
right,
like
right.
to ask our fellow board members to read through those notes that Jeff and I added.
Yeah, no,
about,
I appreciate those.
And they,
Yeah.
the students were so highly engaged, and it was such a great meeting that
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the leadership.
Yeah, I think what we should do is comb those to see if there are any other future action items for us. Yes, sir.
On the next board meeting, can we do committee, board reports?
Sure.
Things, we had a bunch
Sure,
tonight.
yeah,
We
sure.
just make sure we get that in.
No problem.
Everybody's been doing, I got a couple things to update y'all on.
Okay. At 10:04 p.m., we will stand adjourned.